Chapter 114. If Secretary Liang knew what Qin Mo was thinking right now, he would be glad that his CEO finally realized that he wasn't related to Qin Mo by blood. But this kind of awareness seemed to be more like a younger brother complex. Qin Mo didn't think that he was leaning towards the young man at all. He looked at Fu Jiu with his deep eyes and said in a calm voice, "You're not manly at all. Come out and run a few more laps later." As he said that, he turned around and played with the black wristband with his slender fingers. His handsome face was cold as usual. "Change, I don't want to watch." "Fu Jiu, Almighty, can't you just wait outside?" Forget it, it was better for the Almighty to stay in front of her. He was too meticulous, too black-bellied, and too familiar with his tricks. If he wasn't careful, people would fall into his trap. When Fu Jiu was a hacker, she had never met such a difficult person to deal with. If the police were all like the Almighty, she really did think a lot before doing things. But the Almighty seemed to be amenable to coaxing but not coercion. As long as she wavered a little, it seemed that the Almighty would really love her like a little brother. Fu Jiu looked at the man's tall and straight back and slowly curled up her lips. After changing, she didn't have to worry anymore. She had a bandage on her chest and a jacket, so she didn't have to worry about anything else. She directly put her hand on Qin Mo's shoulder from behind and acted like a good little brother. "Brother Mo, give in to me later. I can't control the ball well." Qin Mo held back for a long time before he slapped the young man's hand down. The Almighty told himself coldly that the young man was in the rebellious phase of adolescence. Any resistance to him might cause some damage to his soul. But the young man was too close, and when that familiar, clean, and sweet smell came over, he always wanted to pry open the young man's mouth to see how much candy he had eaten. At this time, Shui Yao Yao was already waiting outside the court with a cup of tea in her hand. In the middle of the coffee table was a very beautiful big fruit plate. Coming to this kind of place was not to play tennis, but to enjoy life. Apart from the green grass outside, the temperature inside was adjusted. The brown sofa was very comfortable to lean on, and there was a faint scent of cologne in the air. Shui Yao Yao was still being reserved. Her legs were too thick, and she always wanted to hide them. But when she raised her head and saw the intimate posture of the two, she actually forgot all about being reserved. She just watched in a daze as the young man smiled at her and then turned his head to whisper into Almighty Qin's ear. The most surprising thing was that Almighty Qin actually curved his lips. Then, he reached out and pinched the young man's neck. "Don't bargain with me. 30 minutes per match, not a second less." Fu Jiu's handsome face fell, and she was a little depressed. "Can't I be handsome? Where's the brother Khan? Your body isn't even worth looking at, and you call yourself handsome?" Qin Mo took the racket that the receptionist passed to him and pressed it into the youngster's arms. In a casual tone, he said, "Play well, don't think of slacking off." The receptionist didn't expect young Master Qin to give his racket to someone else. He looked at Fu Jiu in surprise. Fu Jiu was smart. She could tell from the receptionist's eyes that the racket wasn't provided by the tennis court. It was the Almighty's private property. Chapter 115. Fu Jiu paused, looked up, and set her eyes on the man not far away. He was picking out a racket provided by the court. His slender hands were wrapped in pure black gloves, and he looked quite professional in his professional badminton attire. When he lowered his head, his long and thick eyelashes formed a dark shadow, making him look careless, like a popular star shooting a TV series. If Almighty Qin's current appearance was put on a live broadcast platform, his popularity would probably go up another level. Qin Feng probably noticed the young man's gaze, so he suddenly looked up and looked at Fu Jiu indifferently. "What are you up to now?" Fu Jiu put the racket back and revealed her handsome canine teeth. She smiled brightly. "Nothing, I just think Brother Mo is too handsome, so I want to take a few more glances." Shui Yao Yao was very conflicted as she listened on the side. Why did she feel like His Highness Jiu was flirting with Almighty Qin? Two men were playing tennis together, but Shui Yao Yao felt like they were showing off their love. But, those two people were indeed a good match. Shui Yaoyao held her teacup and looked at the court enviously. Fu Jiu met her gaze and smiled lightly. She walked over with her racket and pulled out her notebook from her bag. She leaned over and said to her, "Log in and play 2 rounds first. I'll talk to you about the problem during the break." Okay. Shui Yaoyao didn't expect that the young man would still think of her at this time. She felt like she was being taken care of, and her face turned red. Fu Jiu's eyes swept over the fruit platter on the coffee table. She picked up a piece of watermelon and put it in her mouth. Her voice was gentle. "You can eat any fruit you want, don't be shy." "Okay." Shui Yaoyao nodded hard. She looked at the young man's face with eyes full of worship. When Qin Mo saw this scene on the court, he bounced the racket in his left hand a few times, and his dark eyes deepened. When Fu Jiu walked over again, she saw that the Almighty's face was a lot colder. Could it be that the game was about to start, so the Almighty's murderous aura was rising? Kick off. Qin Mo left 2 words for the receptionist beside him before he stood tall and straight in front of the net. Fu Jiu's eyes turned serious. The young man bent his knees, and his side profile was clean and handsome. His silver hair fell to the side of his ears, and he was wearing a pair of black earrings. He smashed the ball hard. Qin Mo calmly observed the direction in which the ball was flying. Then, he turned his body sideways, and with a beautiful posture, he gripped his racket tightly and aimed it at the white ball. Pa! Fu Jiu's forehead was instantly hit. He rubbed his face with the side of his hand. His face was in so much pain that it looked pitiful. "Brother Mo, you did it on purpose, didn't you? Hit me in the face." Was she really invited to play badminton? He wasn't here to take revenge on her. Qin Mo looked at the youngster, his eyes dimming. "Since you are here to play, focus on playing. Don't always think about flirting with girls." "Since when did I always think about flirting with girls?" Fu Jiu muttered, feeling a little wronged. Qin Mo's eyes swept over the youngster's fluffy head, and in the end, he couldn't overcome the surging sense of guilt in his heart. He turned his head to look at the receptionist, and his voice wasn't very happy. "Go get the ice." "Ah. Yes." The receptionist still didn't understand what young Master Qin wanted the ice for. Chapter 116. Fu Jiu was stunned. She looked at the man's face in front of her and curled up her lips into a smile. "It's not that serious." The receptionist on the side also felt that young Master Qin wasn't treating his little brother, but a porcelain doll. Young Master Qin used to play even harder, but he had never covered someone's forehead in person. Qin Mo's slender fingers tightened, and his voice was very indifferent. "You'll hurt more next time if you keep shooting." As he spoke, he pinched the youngster's chin and twisted it lightly with his fingertips. "Turn your face over." Fu Jiu didn't feel anything. She held her head high and let Qin Mo cover her forehead for about a minute. Shui Yaoyao, who was still playing games, moved uncomfortably. She felt like she was unnecessary sitting there. It was better for her not to look at the court. It was better for her to reduce her presence. After covering her forehead, Qin Mo served the ball himself. He used a lot less force than before. Fu Jiu was even more handsome than usual when she played, especially when she didn't stop on the court. She kept running back and forth, and her amazing jumping ability matched with her face. She was so youthful that it was enviable. Both of them had good skills, especially Qin Mo. He just stood there and walked back and forth in front of the court without changing his expression. He swung his racket casually, and his amazing skills matched with his perfect, streamlined body, causing the people on the other court to exclaim. "This is professional level, right? Who's the one playing? You don't know him. You should have heard of the Qin family, right?" "Nonsense. I'm not asking about young Master Qin. I'm asking about the youngster he's playing with. Could it be one of the young masters from the military compound?" This kind of court was big, and privacy was important. Qin Mo and his friends were treated like VIPs. When the people on the other side looked here, they could only see the figure, but not the face. Hey, young Master Fu, come over and see if you can see it clearly. Fu Shiming was short, so the adults who were doing business with his father couldn't see him clearly, much less Fu Shiming. He fiddled with the tennis racket in his hand and said, I've seen young Master Qin a few times. Aside from the few people in the military compound, there's no one else around him. There's no need to guess the other party's identity. When those people heard this, they immediately laughed and complimented, that's true, but I haven't seen young Master Qin in real life. Young Master Fu is indeed amazing. That's nothing. Fu Shiming raised his chin indifferently. He was quite arrogant. Fu Zhongyi was elated to hear his son being praised. My son doesn't like to talk much, but he's actually very good at games. Young Master Qin plays games too, so we got to know each other. Since we know each other, why don't we go over and say hello? When those people heard this, they were tempted. Fu Shiming furrowed his brows. Young Master Qin doesn't like to be disturbed when he's playing. In the future. He sounded disappointed, but at least there was still hope. I'll have to rely on young Master Fu's recommendation. Fu Shiming grunted in acknowledgement and glanced in that direction again. In fact, he was thinking if he should find a chance to talk to young Master Qin when he was free. The reason why he came here to play tennis was because he heard that young Master Qin often came here to exercise. He had indeed met young Master Qin a few times before, but it was always at the entrance and they didn't talk much. Chapter 117. After the game, even the counselor who was watching from the side couldn't help but want to praise the beautiful game. Almighty Qin won, of course. Fu Jiu's stamina couldn't keep up. In the second half of the match, there was a thin layer of sweat on her fair forehead, and even her silver hair was wet. She put it to her ear, raised her hand to wipe it, and smiled. Brother Mo, I'm going to take a break. We'll play the second match later. Qin Mo glanced at him and handed his thermos to the young man. Fu Jiu was indeed thirsty. People who had just finished exercising had to drink water. She took the thermos and drank several mouthfuls. Once again, the receptionist was shocked. He turned his head silently and looked at the person next to him. Young Master Qin was really different today. He wasn't a clean freak at all. Fu Jiu drank 2 mouthfuls and realized that Qin Mo didn't drink any water either, so she handed the thermos back. The receptionist thought, if you give something to young Master Qin, he will definitely look at you coldly and slap you in the face. But, the man held the young man's hand and drank 2 mouthfuls casually. Then he turned his head and ordered them, pick up the ball. Oh, yes. No wonder the receptionists were a little slow today. This scene was too impactful. Fu Jiu saw that the Almighty didn't seem to be thirsty, so she came to Shui Yao Yao with the thermos and took a piece of watermelon in her mouth. Then she tilted her head and looked at the screen. She put one hand behind Shui Yao Yao and the other on the mouse. You don't need to be so fast for your profession. Besides the keyboard, use the mouse. When the enemy attacks, dodge first and then grab the ball. Shui Yao Yao watched the young man easily use the ultimate move on the screen, and her eyes were full of shock. She had always wanted to ask His Highness Jiu, who was so good at playing, what was his name in the game. But before she could open her mouth, she saw Almighty Qin sitting in front of them with his legs crossed. He didn't sweat at all, which made people feel that this man was naturally unattainable. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His whole body exuded elegance and luxury. But his eyes were so cold that no one dared to look at them directly. Shui Yao Yao didn't understand how Highness Jiu dared to put his arm around this man's shoulder. Anyway, she was scared to death. Almighty Qin's gaze on her hand was too oppressive. Shui Yao Yao couldn't help but look down. Only then did she realize that Almighty Qin wasn't looking at her, but at His Highness Jiu's hand on the back of her hand. Did you see it clearly? The young man's voice was still ringing in her ears, still gentle. Hit me like this from now on. Shui Yaoyao braced herself and replied, okay. He pulled Fu Jiu over and said in a low voice, I asked you to come here to play tennis, not to teach. I even told you not to be half-hearted. Did you forget it so quickly? MMH? Fu Jiu looked at Qin Mo and said in a low voice. Fu Jiu touched her nose. Shui Yaoyao wanted to help the young man out. Your Highness Jiu, I know what you just said. You guys continue fighting, I'll pack my things and leave first. Leave first? Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. It's not convenient to take a car here. We will send you back after we finish the fight. Right, Brother Mo? Although Qin Mo didn't like the way the young man flirted with girls, he still had the basic manners, so he replied with a faint, Chapter 118. No, no need. Shui Yaoyao quickly waved her hands. When she said this, she unconsciously looked in Qin Mo's direction. Almighty Qin probably didn't want her to play tennis with His Highness Jiu. Don't ask her why she felt this way. This was her first reaction. But Fu Jiu misunderstood her look. Or do you prefer to play with Brother Mo? You pick one of us. Hearing that, Qin Mo frowned his thick eyebrows without changing his expression. Fu Jiu had already stood up with a smile. Who should I pick? Shui Yaoyao followed her and said, then His Highness Jiu should choose you. She really didn't dare to choose Almighty Qin. His inherent elegance always made her feel a little breathless. Looks like I'm more charming than Brother Mo. Fu Jiu's words were directed at Qin Mo. She smiled, revealing her sharp white canine teeth. Her silver hair hadn't completely dried yet. It was really hard to hate her. But Qin Mo's eyes swept over the girl standing next to the young man, and his fingers paused. Wasn't his little brother being too nice to Shui Yaoyao? He hadn't known Fu Jiu for a long time. Whether it was the young man outside the game or the spade Z in the game, they weren't that easy to get close to. Qin Mo always thought that he was the one that the young man treated specially. But now it seemed that he was even nicer to Shui Yaoyao. Thinking of this, Qin Mo couldn't help but take another look at the chubby Shui Yaoyao. Shui Yaoyao felt a chill on the back of her neck, and she was too embarrassed to turn around. To be honest, she was really too fat. She was different from when the young man came on the court. Her legs were chubby, and they would definitely shake when she ran, which wasn't pretty at all. No one liked to expose their shortcomings in front of their idol, but it was unrealistic to go back and play games. Almighty Qin obviously didn't want to see them playing on the computer. Fu Jiu was right next to her, and she also saw her scruples. While she was choosing a racket, she chuckled and said, I've been wanting to ask, why do you call me Highness Jiu? This is because the girls in school like you. Not that kind of like, but that kind of like. Shui Yaoyao was afraid that she couldn't explain clearly, so her face was still red. Anyway, it's your fangirls. We gave you this nickname together, because you look like the ancient princes, evil and domineering. Fu Jiu found this explanation quite interesting. Crown Prince? Her. The girl's thoughts were still very cute. Then let this prince teach you how to play tennis. A lot of girls aren't good at this. In order to make Shui Yaoyao look less awkward, Fu Jiu smiled and blinked her left eye. Then, she reached over and put her hand on Shui Yaoyao's hand. She had a handsome and clean face. Not only was her posture handsome, but her voice was also very pleasant. Exert force with your fingers. When you're playing, try to lower your body as much as possible. Keep your eyes level with the racket and the ball you want to hit. Use your ankles to drive your whole body, just like this. With that said, Fu Jiu held Shui Yaoyao's hand and pushed the racket upwards. Her movements were very cool, and her silver hair flew past Shui Yaoyao's ear. Chapter 119. Shui Yaoyao's heart was beating erratically. She never dared to imagine that she would be so close to the young man one day. His Highness Jiu's unique gentleness could really melt people. Can you? The melodious voice rang in her ears again, and when she turned her head, she saw the young man's smile. Even the beauties on the tennis court couldn't help but look over, their eyes full of envy. I want such a handsome guy to teach me tennis too. That's such a sweet smile. Who is he? I don't know, it's my first time seeing him. The beauties couldn't help but stop what they were doing. They all looked at Fu Jiu through the net, their eyes burning. Only in the semi-transparent lounge, the temperature was low. The receptionist standing next to Qin Mo didn't even dare to turn his head. It wasn't an illusion. The coldness emitted from young Master Qin could almost freeze people's blood. What the hell was going on? Qin Mo looked at the court with one hand supporting his chin. His slender fingers in black gloves rested on the back of the chair. His long and deep eyes were extremely cold, and even his voice was like a flower blooming in the North Pole. Every word he said was cold and bone-chilling. Call them back. After all, he came from the military compound, and his ruthlessness was never hidden. Rest after 30 minutes. He doesn't understand this, but neither do you. As he said this, he raised his head carelessly and glanced at the receptionist. That pair of eyes was so deep that it made people's scalps go numb. The receptionist didn't dare to refute. Although young Master Qin always played for more than 2 hours before stopping, now that young Master Qin said to rest after 30 minutes, they had to rest. Young Master Jiu. The receptionist actually felt that it was a little disharmonious to interrupt the young man's teaching at this time, but what could he do? He didn't dare to disobey young Master Qin's words. Fu Jiu glanced sideways. Miss, you look very hot. You didn't rest enough just now, right? The receptionist was good at talking, and he tried to find an excuse without blinking. I haven't exercised before, and it's not good for my body if I exercise for too long. Let's clean the court first, and you two can play later. If you want to fight again, then fight with young Master Qin. Don't leave young Master Qin here to teach girls again. Otherwise, I'll have to find another excuse. Fu Jiu found it strange that the stadium needed to be cleaned after only half an hour of playing. But since the receptionist brought it up, she couldn't say anything more. She took Shui Yao Yao to the lounge. The moment she looked up, she saw that the man's expression was a little colder, but he still looked dignified. His fingers slid across her homemade book, and the other hand held the coffee. He looked like a king. This book is not bad. Of course, Fu Jiu accepted all the compliments. You bought a good hard drive, and it runs very fast. I'll use it to play with Brother Mo in the future. Qin Mo replied and didn't continue the topic. Instead, he turned to look at Shui Yao Yao and casually twirled the black gloves on his hands. Miss Shui, how did you get to know my brother Jiu? I see that you two have a good relationship. Ninth brother. Shui Yao Yao was still a little confused by this title, but she still had to answer Almighty Qin's question, even if she had to bite the bullet. His Highness Jiu and I are now deskmates. His Highness Jiu is very nice and takes good care of me. Chapter 120. Shui Yao Yao didn't understand why Almighty Qin would ask that, so she just nodded vaguely. Fu Jiu was still drinking water. When she raised her head, her fair neck looked especially long and slender. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster, and he happened to see Fu Jiu's movement. His deep eyes swept over that smooth area, and he couldn't help but reach out and pull her over. You have so much free time after school that you can flirt with girls freely. You don't need to study anymore, right? What do you mean by picking up girls freely? Fu Jiu coughed. Brother Mo, don't wrongly accuse me. Yao Yao is my teammate and my physics tutor. My grades will be in her hands in the future. Just studying. Qin Mo felt that this question needed to be answered. He looked sideways at that fair and handsome face, and he said faintly, don't bother girls with tutoring, especially Miss Shui. She should be very busy. I. Shui Yao Yao wanted to say that she wasn't busy, but when she met Almighty Qin's cold eyes, she swallowed her words. Fu Jiu really hadn't considered this problem. Shui Yaoyao's family wasn't very well off, and playing games would definitely take up a lot of her time. She probably had to cook for herself, and she also needed to tutor her in physics. It seemed like she didn't have much time. It's okay, I can hire a physics tutor. Fu Jiu smiled at Shui Yaoyao, obviously trying to help her out of this situation. Qin Mo looked at them from the side, and his eyes darkened. Do you feel proud when outsiders find out that you failed physics? Fu Jiu. Brother Mo, don't be so sharp with your words. This is how friendships are broken. Fu Jiu was a bit listless when it came to grades, especially physics. I have no choice. I have to pass every subject in the esports selection contest. At this point, Fu Jiu smiled again. She leaned a little closer to Qin Mo with a devilish and flirtatious look. How about I bribe Brother Mo, and you let me in through the back door? Qin Mo glanced at the young man. 10 million, and I'll let you pass. Fu Jiu's handsome face fell. Brother, give me 10 million and let me hire a tutor. The coldness in Qin Mo's eyes dissipated a little when he saw the youngster's expression. I'll tutor you in physics from now on. Shui Yaoyao, receptionist, why did they feel that young Master Qin, Almighty Qin, had gone one round just to say this? Fu Jiu was also stunned. Brother Mo, aren't you usually busier? I still have time to tutor a slacker like you. Qin Mo stood up as he spoke, his large hand caressing the youngster's fluffy head. In the future, leave such embarrassing matters to me, understand? Fu Jiu. So the Almighty thought that her little brother was an embarrassment, which was why he wanted to teach her physics. Suddenly, he felt that studying was very stressful. What? Are you unwilling? Qin Mo studied the youngster's face and sneered. He didn't need to hide his evil aura anymore. He enunciated each word coldly. Do you want me to throw you out? Fu Jiu laughed. Then let me make it clear first. When you teach me, you are not allowed to say that I have a low IQ. Qin Mo smiled as well, looking very handsome. He reached out and pinched the youngster's chin, the faint scent of tobacco lingering on his fingertips. Do you have intelligence? Fu Jiu. Chapter 121. Then, the two of them played a round of tennis. This time, Shui Yaoyao consciously treated herself as a wallpaper. The match between Qin Mo and Fu Jiu was worth watching. But for Fu Shiming, who wanted to meet Qin Mo by chance, it was a torturous wait. He was the young master of the Fu family, and there were so many people coming and going at the door. He stood there like a receptionist, which was really embarrassing. 15 minutes ago, he had sent someone to find young Master Qin and said that he wanted to play a game of tennis with him. Logically speaking, such a request would not be rejected. But the reply he got was that young Master Qin was busy, and he was not even allowed to enter the lounge. 15 minutes, he had been standing there for a full 15 minutes. Most importantly, young Master Qin did not give him a negative answer. If he waited any longer, what would he do when those people who were doing business with the Fu family came out? If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have boasted when he first came out. Fu Shiming gripped the racket in his hand and smiled at the bodyguard in black. Can you help me ask again? When will young Master Qin come out? The bodyguard in black was polite, so he did as he was told. But after Qin Mo heard the question, he still said indifferently, let him wait. Fu Jiu saw that the bodyguard in black had come in 4 times in such a short period of time. She twisted the black bandage on her wrist and turned her head. What's the matter? Nothing. Qin Mo saw that the young man was sweating, so he turned his face over and said faintly, did that Fu Shiming bully you last time? Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Last time? Bullied her? That illegitimate son couldn't even bully her. But since the Almighty asked, she had to nod. Of course, she had to nod her head. Yes, yes. That's right. Qin Mo flicked his racket and said something incomprehensible. Fu Jiu was confused and didn't understand what the Almighty was talking about. But it didn't affect her handsomeness as she smiled at Qin Mo. Almighty Qin felt that there was nothing wrong with what he did. Since someone bullied his little brother, as the big brother, he had to stand up for his little brother. Fu Shiming didn't know when he had provoked a man. He stood outside for 40 minutes, and his handsome face was full of embarrassment. Some guests even regarded him as an assistant coach and waved him over to pick up the ball. This scene was witnessed by Fu Zhongyi and the others who just came out. Fu Shiming couldn't take it anymore. He glared at the customer and said, "You're the one who picked up the ball." The customer was also annoyed. "Aren't you here to pick up the ball? What are you doing standing here?" Fu Shiming didn't know what to say. He didn't even enter the door. He just used brute force to rush outside. "Young Master Fu, what's wrong? Where is young Master Qin?" The group of people asked anxiously. Fu Shiming had nowhere to vent his anger, so he directly said, "Scram." These people were not as rich as his family anyway. The faces of the elders immediately changed. Fu Zhongyi still wanted to explain. "This child," the guest sneered, "Ha! Young Master Qin. Is young Master Qin someone he can see whenever he wants? He has been standing outside for more than half an hour. It's obvious that he hasn't given up after being rejected by young Master Qin. I've seen too many people like him. He thinks that after playing tennis twice, he can suck up to young Master Qin, but he still got angry. Pfft! Stop pretending to be rich." Just this sentence put Fu Zhongyi in an extremely awkward situation. After the bodyguard in black saw this scene, he walked in again and whispered something in Qin Mo's ear. Qin Mo's expression didn't even change. He held the racket in his hand and said in a calm voice, "Got it." Chapter 122. A game of tennis didn't end until it was dark. Qin Mo was really busy. As the CEO of the company, he was also the captain of the Supreme Alliance. His calls were bound to come from time to time. Since the Almighty had no time to care about her, Fu Jiu entered the changing room and quickly changed her clothes. She put one hand in her trouser pocket, smiled evilly at the man who was still talking on the phone, and gestured for him to go out first. Qin Mo didn't want Fu Jiu to go out first. He thought that this guy was good at flirting, and if he didn't keep her by his side, she would cause him trouble. However, on second thought, the young man was now in the rebellious stage of adolescence, so he couldn't be too strict with him. Thus, he nodded, but his eyes were still full of warning, meaning nothing more than for him to behave. The person on the other side of the phone didn't know why their president was so quiet. He thought there was something wrong with his report. He said in a trembling voice, "President Qin. Continue." Qin Mo put down the racket and walked into the changing room. He held the phone in one hand and bit the zipper of his jersey with his teeth. His other hand exerted force, and his posture was ruthless and handsome. Fu Jiu looked back at those smooth lines that were enough to drive women crazy and make men jealous. She then looked back at herself. In the future, she'd better not bring up the topic of comparing size with the Almighty. It felt a little dangerous. The three of them sat in the same car as before. But this time, both the driver and Shui Yao Yao were much more receptive than before. "Send Miss Shui home first." "Yes." The driver drove steadily. But it was hard to enter Shui Yao Yao's house. It was an old residential area next to a vegetable market. Bicycles were everywhere. Not to mention Qin Mo, even the driver rarely came to such a place. Shui Yao Yao was sensible and didn't let them drive too deep. "Let's stop here. My house isn't far. I can walk the rest of the way." "Thank you, Almighty Qin." "Thank you, Your Highness Jiu." Fu Jiu saw her get out of the car, so she followed. "Is it really not far?" "Yes." Shui Yao Yao nodded. Her round face was actually very cute. "Your Highness Jiu, don't worry. I will practice the skills you taught me today when I get home." "Oh, anything is fine." Fu Jiu smiled. Seeing that she had been a little nervous the whole day, she reached out and flicked her forehead. With me as the captain, we won't lose. Shui Yaoyao covered her forehead with her hand and smiled. Highness Jiu was indeed very gentle, both of them were wearing school uniforms. Fu Jiu was already very eye-catching, and with such an action, people couldn't help but look back. The youthful atmosphere was very strong, especially in such a lively scene. Qin Mo was still sitting in the back seat with the car window rolled down. His dark eyes were as dark as the cold night, and all his emotions were drowned in them. His hand holding the business tablet paused for a moment, as though he was enduring something. This time, he didn't get out of the car. Instead, he waited for the youngster to get into the car before he slowly tidied his sleeves. Cancel today's dinner. Let's go back home. The driver, returned to the main family. But there was someone else in the car. Did young master forget to send ninth young master home? Fu Jiu paused a little and raised her eyebrows. What about me? Qin Mo tilted his head and smiled, but he didn't look very happy. He patted the youngster's cheek with his black-gloved right hand. His breath was like the north wind in winter, cold to the bone. Chapter 123. Go home with the Almighty. Fu Jiu thought about it, and there was nothing wrong with that. There should be a lot of good computer parts in the Almighty's house. Okay, after we get there, we can visit Brother Mo's room. Fu Jiu said it casually. But after the driver heard what his young master said, he was shocked. Young master was going to bring someone from outside the compound home? This was something that had never happened before. Even when young master was in school, he didn't invite anyone home. Although young master's tone just now didn't sound like an invitation, but like he was looking for trouble. But it was enough to make people feel like it was a dream. The car didn't go fast, and Fu Jiu could see the special signs of the military compound along the way. This kind of place was usually quiet in the middle of the hustle and bustle. Vehicles going in and out had to be checked, and ordinary people couldn't get in at all. Every day, there were special armed soldiers standing guard, and they were the most powerful people. In her previous life, it wasn't that she hadn't been to such a place. It was just that at that time, she was still the #1 player that all the intelligence agencies wanted to capture. As soon as Qin Mo got out of the car, all the soldiers in military uniforms raised their arms with a whoosh. It really made people feel that this place was different from the outside world. Young master. A middle-aged woman dressed like a servant came up to him. Qin Mo pulled Fu Jiu over with one hand, and his voice was very calm. Auntie Zhang, Fu Jiu, this is my brother. He will come often in the future, so you can arrange things accordingly. Auntie Zhang was stunned. She had worked for the Fu family for so long, and since when did young master have a brother? Boss and madam probably didn't know. Fu Jiu still wanted to talk to Auntie Zhang, and that charming and evil smile appeared. But Almighty Qin grabbed her wrist. Don't flirt with people, understand? I'm just saying hello. Qin Mo tightened his grip, and his voice was very calm. You can't even say hello, go upstairs. Fu Jiu was sucking on the lollipop, and she was a little depressed. Almighty Qin, as her brother, was he too strict with her? Qin Mo entered the room, threw his jacket on the sofa, and unbuttoned his shirt with his left hand. He raised his eyebrows and looked at the young man with a domineering and ruthless look. Do you think I'm strict with you? Fu Jiu also sat down and yawned lazily. A little. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster's head that was so close to him. Somehow, the coldness in him receded a little, and his entire body was filled with elegance. Let's talk about something men talk about. Fu Jiu, a conversation between men. It wasn't appropriate for her to chat with him, she was not a man. To be honest, Brother Mo, you've got the wrong person. Do you want to fall in love now? Seeing the youngster's listless expression, Qin Mo felt that his tone was too harsh. After all, he shouldn't treat his younger brother like a subordinate, so he added, I'm not against puppy love, but you should focus on your studies now. Fujiu was confused. She didn't want to be in a relationship. Stay away from girls in the future. Seeing that the youngster didn't look up, Qin Mo's voice softened. Before falling in love, you should at least pass the test, right? Last place, huh? Fujiu couldn't help but raise her arm and place it on the man's shoulder. Her eyes were very beautiful. Brother Mo, why don't we talk about how to be a good brother? Chapter 124. Usually, at this time, no one dared to mess with Qin Mo. But Fujiu was different. In her eyes, nothing was scary. It would be better if you could be a little more tolerant. I haven't thrown you out yet. I'm already being very tolerant. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster's hand lightly, and his voice was low. Fujiu looked at her posture and explained seriously, I'm doing this because I'm close to Brother Mo. I see that there are many people who are close to you, such as Shui Yaoyao. Qin Mo sneered. He hadn't expected this guy to have feelings for such a girl. He tugged at his shirt and changed the topic. Are you hungry? Qin Mo's lips curled into a smile as he looked at Qin Mo. Fujiu nodded with a lollipop in her mouth. I've been hungry for a long time. Hearing that, Qin Mo glanced at the youngster. But he felt that he was making a mountain out of a molehill. It was just a good feeling, not a liking. It was normal to have feelings for people at this age. Too much discipline would indeed attract disgust. Youth was rebellious. Thinking of these words, Qin Mo decided to discipline him appropriately and not overdo it. What do you want to eat? Qin Mo asked Fujiu as he walked to the phone. Fujiu thought for a while. Spicy hot pot, with more tripe and beef, and a plate of vegetables. Qin Mo didn't attack the youngster for being a foodie after hearing that. He lowered his eyes and pressed the intercom. Hello, Auntie Zhang, let's eat at home. Prepare some hot pot seasonings, spicy seasonings, and, Fujiu looked at the man's handsome and elegant side profile and was a little surprised. She thought they would go out to eat, but she didn't expect to eat at Qin's house. Look around first, I'm going to change. After saying this, Qin Mo tugged at his collar as if he was going to walk into his bedroom. Then he thought of something and stopped, asking, do you want to change too? Of course, Fujiu wouldn't agree. She didn't want to experience what happened in the changing room again. Brother Mo's clothes are too big for me. Hearing that, Qin Mo looked the youngster up and down. He was indeed a little short. But he didn't say this out loud. As a good brother, it was necessary to save some face for his little brother. Unfortunately, Fujiu didn't realize that the Almighty was saving her face. After all, Almighty Qin's eyes were too expressive. She wasn't stupid, so she knew what he was thinking. She looked down at herself. She was 173 centimeters. As a girl, she wasn't short at all. Since her master was gone, of course Fujiu would walk around. She was especially interested in this man who had almost caught her. After all, she had been free and unfettered in the West for so many years. The police had sent a lot of manpower to lock onto her, but they had yet to find her. They didn't even know whether she was a man or a woman. This time, she was found out partly because she couldn't keep up with the tools she used before. But even so, the Almighty's reasoning ability was inhuman. With Qin, with he, he with, he with, he, fu, with, I, he, with, he, I fu, he, fu, he, with, he with, he. Chapter 125. On the mainland, there weren't many people who could study criminal psychology. What's more, there weren't many who could write annotations in a book. Fujiu curled up her thin lips playfully. The Almighty had hidden himself quite well. No wonder they all said that young Master Qin was someone the entire Northeast province couldn't afford to offend. If the police had someone like the Almighty, it would be hard for her to hide herself. Criminal psychology, psychological profiler, and computer expert, Fu Jiu always believed that there were some people in this world who couldn't be compared to them no matter how many times they were reborn. The Almighty might be one of those people, interested in my book. Qin Mo had already changed his clothes. He was wearing a light-colored knitted sweater with a pair of cloth trousers. It made him look much softer, like those male celebrities in Country H at home. His black hair was stuck to his ears, and it was slightly damp. His exposed wrists looked especially white. He walked around Fu Jiu's back and put his slender fingers on the book, Criminal Psychology, she was reading. The light scent of mint mixed with a hint of tobacco fell from the top of Fu Jiu's head. It was very familiar and very pleasant. In that position, when Fu Jiu turned her head back, she saw the man's smooth chin. Fu Jiu thought about his height again. She wasn't short, but the man was a whole head taller than her. No wonder the Almighty looked at her so disdainfully when he walked in. He was so tall that he indeed had the right to disdain her. Qin Mo also lowered his eyes. His deep eyes fell on the young man's face, and they seemed to freeze for a moment. Soon, he took the book out of her hands and put it back on the shelf. He grabbed the back collar of the young man's school uniform with his other hand and turned his body sideways to ask Fu Jiu. His thin lips were very close to the young man's face, and his breath could hit Fu Jiu's face. Do I look good? Not bad. Fu Jiu smiled lightly, and it was somewhat seductive. No wonder Brother Mo could locate my range so quickly. Your deduction ability is so strong. If I knew this earlier, I wouldn't have jumped out so quickly. I would have played a few more rounds with Brother Mo. Qin Mo told himself once again that the young man was in his rebellious phase. As an older brother, even if this guy touched his things, he wouldn't. He couldn't break his claws. However, he still had to take care of this child. Qin Mo exerted his strength. He didn't care what position the youngster was in and dragged him out. You can read the extracurricular books later. Let's go eat first. Ever since she met the Almighty, the number of times she was treated like a sack had increased. Fu Jiu, Brother Mo, let's talk. Don't always drag me around like this. It's affecting my image. Won't it affect your image to read other people's books? Qin Mo grabbed onto the youngster as though he was lecturing a disobedient cat. Fu Jiu didn't deny it. I just want to see how powerful the person who caught me is. Brother Mo, what else do you do besides playing games? Make money. After Qin Mo finished speaking, he pinched the youngster's chin forcefully. Don't ask so much. If you continue with your nonsense, I'll cook you up and stew you in hot pot. Chapter 126. I don't need to chase after a girlfriend. Women will naturally chase after me. Qin Mo's voice was very calm, and he lowered his handsome face. Even his breath was on Fu Jiu's lips. So what you said is not within my consideration. Be good and listen to me. Don't let me break your neck. That's what you need to do, understand? After saying this, Qin Mo let go of the youngster. His back was straight and even seemed to be matter-of-factly. Fu Jiu found it hard to refute what the Almighty said. According to the man's style, he didn't need to worry about finding a girlfriend. In Jiang City, not only girls who played games worshipped him as a god. Even young ladies who didn't play games couldn't resist the temptation of the Qin family's power and influence. And, even if all these things were thrown out, with the Almighty's figure and looks, even if he went to a nightclub, he would still be a popular cowherd. In the future, she shouldn't attack the Almighty with girlfriends, because she couldn't do it at all. Unlike the Almighty who attacked her grades, every attack was accurate. Thinking of this, Fu Jiu was a little depressed. She was going to comfort herself with hot beef hot pot later. But what she didn't expect was that after she sat down, there was a set of chopsticks and bowls on the table. That seat was placed in front of the man. Fu Jiu looked up at Aunt Zhang with a light smile. That clean and handsome face was full of sunshine. Aunt Zhang didn't dare to make eye contact with this handsome boy. She just kept tilting her head and looking at Qin Mo, looking like she wanted to say something but didn't. Seeing this, Fu Jiu knew that the Almighty had ordered her to do something. She didn't beat around the bush and said to Qin Mo, "Brother Mo, where are my chopsticks?" The beef in the spicy pot was boiling. At this time, she took it out and stuffed a big mouthful into her mouth. Even her lips and teeth were fragrant. Just thinking about it made her feel delicious. Qin Mo only lifted his eyes slightly and put a pile of beef into his bowl with his chopsticks. "This brother of mine is so bad, so of course I'll eat it." "You watch. Fu Jiu. Almighty, you can't be so cruel. You won't have any friends, do you know that?" Qin Mo glanced at him again, only to see the youngster's handsome face collapse instantly. His beautiful eyes were still looking at him, his silver hair fluttering innocently. This reminded him of the youth's rebellious phase, and he began to reflect on whether he had gone too far. After all, this was the youth's first visit. "Are you craving beef?" Qin Mo asked the person opposite him. Fu Jiu held her chin and licked her lower lip with the tip of her tongue, looking devilishly handsome. "Brother Mo, I've been playing tennis with you for so long, I'm hungry." "When you were playing tennis with me, how many people did you flirt with? Have you counted?" Qin Mo smiled, but it wasn't warm. "I spent a third of my time teaching others." Fu Jiu paused and stood up all of a sudden. She put her arm on the table and leaned over. Her thin lips curled into a smile. "Jealous? Jealous?" Qin Mo's body temperature dropped even further. He held the bamboo chopsticks in his hand and used his eyes to signal the youngster to look at the bottom of the pot. "You want to become it again?" Chapter 127. Qin Mo could tell that the young man was listless again. His deep eyes glanced at Fu Jiu's lowered head, and the corner of his mouth lifted. He acted like a big brother. "Will you still have puppy love in the future?" Fu Jiu shook her head and felt that something was wrong. When did she have puppy love? She was just flirting with a girl. She wanted to look up and explain, but she didn't expect that as soon as she opened her mouth, the man stuffed a mouthful of tender beef into it. After the beef cooled down, it wasn't too hot, and it tasted just right. The man was still holding the bamboo chopsticks in his hand, but the other end of the chopsticks was fed to the young man. After seeing this scene, not only Aunt Zhang, who was standing next to them, opened her mouth wide, but even the soldiers standing guard all looked at each other in disbelief. What was going on? Young master actually. He actually knew how to feed people. Aunt Zhang still remembered that when the young master was about 8 years old, he was sitting in the courtyard reading a book. At such a young age, he was already very much like a gentleman. He wore a pure black suit with a fluffy windbreaker over it. He always had a cup of tea by his hand, and everyone in the courtyard would turn to look at him. Madame was also very happy at that time, and she wanted to feed the young master a bite of fruit. At first, the young master didn't say anything. He probably thought that Madame was tired of coaxing him. Only then did the young master put down the book calmly and said to his wife with a dignified expression, "Mother, saliva spreads germs more than 10 times faster than normal breathing. It's common sense not to feed other people with your own toothpicks." This scene was still replaying in Aunt Zhang's mind until now. How could a child who was less than 10 years old talk about the spread of germs to his own mother? That kind of scene was really cute and surprising. Later on, whenever Aunt Zhang cooked something, her first thought was whether the food was clean or not. After all, their young master's obsession with cleanliness was real. But, when did such a young master feed people with his own chopsticks? Didn't they say germs could spread? Now the young master didn't care about germs. If Madame saw this scene, she would definitely lose her elegance. Fu Jiu didn't think much of it. Nothing was better than having meat to eat. In an instant, he tossed aside the question of puppy love. Chin Mo looked at the youngster's handsome smile and didn't say anything else. Since he was the younger brother that he recognized, of course, he had to raise him carefully. He should have realized his own problem by now. If she was no longer in love, it meant that she was still obedient to him. Compared to those who ran amok all day long, this was much better. Moreover, the way the young man ate was also very appetizing. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like a cat that he raised. As long as it was fed, it would be obedient. He would observe it for a while. After all, it was the rebellious phase of youth. After telling himself this, Chin Mo ate a few mouthfuls of beef with the same pair of bamboo chopsticks. This shocked Aunt Zhang once again. She took out the spare pair of bamboo chopsticks in her hand and didn't use it. She felt that this day was like a fantasy from beginning to end. But at the same time, she felt happy for her young master. After all, this was the first time she saw the young master being so close to someone. This kind of young master was finally a little more humane. Chapter 128. After eating the hot pot, Fu Jiu was very satisfied. Just as she was about to say goodbye to the Almighty in a cool manner, she heard the man say slowly, "I've asked someone to prepare the physics books. The tutoring starts today." Fu Jiu had a natural aversion to physics. She supported her chin with her fingers and smiled like a playboy. "Rushing like this will affect your learning efficiency. In less than 7 days, your school's monthly exams will start. Do you think you can pass physics with your poor grades if you don't rush the tutoring?" Chin Mo took the pen. His side profile was still handsome, and his voice was calm as if he was just stating a fact. But even so, our Lord Jiu still felt like she was being attacked. Fu Jiu couldn't help but ask herself why she chose the Almighty of all people to tutor her. "Get up and follow me upstairs if you're full. Don't dawdle if you're a man." Chin Mo was wearing a knitted sweater with one hand in his trouser pocket. He didn't look so oppressive, and because of this, Fu Jiu didn't dare to flirt with him. The Almighty was too pure and refined. If she wasn't careful, she would be swayed by his face. The ancient people said that femme fatale was not groundless. She was bewitched by his face. Focus. The two of them sat in front of the same desk. Apart from the physics textbooks, there were all kinds of data cables, economic magazines, and the tablet that the Almighty often used, as well as psychological analysis tables. Fu Jiu was more interested in the latter. Chin Mo's slender fingers tapped on the desk as he flipped open the physics textbook with a calm expression. Fu Jiu finally pulled her attention back. Almighty Chin's phone vibrated beside him. He didn't look at it immediately. Instead, he looked up and asked Fu Jiu, "What don't you know?" Fu Jiu's fingers were still twirling around her silver hair. After hearing this question, she froze again. Then, she looked at Chin Mo seriously and said, "I don't know anything." Chin Mo's hand paused as he turned his head to look at the young man who was still flirting with him and raised his eyebrows. "Are you proud?" Fu Jiu touched her nose. "I didn't say I was proud. Start from the beginning." Chin Mo's fingertips landed on one of the formulas. "Remember this formula first, then." Fu Jiu listened carefully. After all, this was the key to whether she could participate in the esports selection contest. "This isn't right." Unexpectedly, Chin Mo was exceptionally patient when it came to teaching. Perhaps all geniuses were like this. In their eyes, physics and chemistry were just some little tadpoles that they could play around with. During this period, Chin Mo also received 2 calls, both of which were business-related matters. The Almighty was multitasking and handled them beautifully. Someone seemed to have asked, "Boss Chin, what formula are you talking about? Speed? Density?" "I'm going to tutor my brother," Chin Mo replied calmly. The other boss on the other side of the phone was shocked. He turned his head and asked his friend next to him, "When did CEO Chin have a younger brother? Which one of them is having a second child? That's not possible, right? Little brother?" His friend was also confused. The boss nodded. That's right, it's his younger brother. He even said that he was tutoring his younger brother. Friends. Chapter 129. He lowered his head, and his warm breath blew behind Fujio's ear as he spoke. Fujio paused and looked up at the man's eyes, which were as deep as the sea. He said one last sentence, "I'm not going out today." Then, he hung up the phone. When his eyelashes lowered, they cast a thick shadow on his face, making his side profile look exceptionally handsome. Fujio tilted her head to avoid this action. Chin Mo didn't say anything else, and his eyes swept over the youngster's face. Write it again. It was really stressful to have such a master. Fujio moved the pen in her hand quickly, like a struggling cockroach. The Almighty's presence was too strong, and no one could compare to him. But there was one good thing about him. The biggest difference between a genius and an ordinary person was that he could quickly get an accurate recognition. Fujio. The youngster looked at him handsomely with his white teeth biting his nose. Chin Mo rubbed his temples with his slender fingers. Physics is really not suitable for you. Brother Mo, let me tell you something. Don't you think physics is anti-humanity? Fujio said seriously. Chin Mo sneered. I think you're the one who's inhumane when you were born. Fujio. Can't we have a pleasant conversation? That's not going to work. Chin Mo turned his fingers and pulled the physics book aside. At this speed, you won't pass in 7 days. Fujio agreed with the Almighty for the first time. I think so too. Tick out your recent courses. Chin Mo flipped through the magazine. Fujio looked at the physics book in her hand and decided to tell the truth. You have to ask the teacher. Chin Mo looked sideways at the youngster and said indifferently, if I were your physics teacher, I'd throw you out right now. She didn't even know where she was studying. Fujio didn't feel guilty and asked curiously, what do you do if you know the courses? Help you predict the questions. The Almighty's careless words made Fujio realize the essential difference between a bad student and a top student. It turned out that a top student could predict the questions. This was unfair to poor students like them. What was the difference between this and knowing the answer before the exam? Fujio was still a little depressed when Chin Mo stood up from his seat. What are you going to do? The Almighty decided to be merciful and let her rest. Chin Mo glanced at the youngster. Call your director and ask about his progress. The Almighty didn't say anything, but for some reason, Fujio could see the helplessness in his eyes. Fujio thought to herself as she unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. Then, she lowered her head to look at the series of formulas. She was so handsome. The physics formula was so ugly. It was obvious that physics was more anti-benevolent. When the director of Jiang City No. 1 Middle School received Chin Mo's call, he was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. When Chin Mo said the second sentence, he straightened his back. Young Master Chin. Where was the physics in the worst class? This. I'll call the teacher now. Chapter 130. Director Wang didn't know why young Master Chin suddenly cared about the seating problem, so he just said respectfully, yes. Director Quan, don't you think that it's easy to have a wrong feeling when a man and a woman sit together at the same table? Chin Mo's slender fingers were still holding the mineral water bottle. The reflection of his eyes on the bottle was like the water inside, with a slight coolness. Chief Wang was dumbfounded. Wrong feelings? Puppy love. After Chin Mo said these two words, Director Quan immediately understood what Director Chin meant. Yes, young Master Chin is right. We, the directors, have sat together to discuss this problem. It must be changed to have a man and a woman sit together at the same table. Chin Mo said faintly. Director Quan couldn't hear the emotion in it, so he asked nervously, Young Master Chin, do you know anyone in the bad class? Otherwise, according to young Master Qin's character, he would never ask about people in the school. Qin Mo didn't speak this time, because the young man was looking up at him with his long and narrow eyes that were bright and beautiful. Fu Jiu didn't know what Almighty Qin said, but she was thirsty, so she followed him over. Seeing the man still holding the phone in his hand, she raised her eyebrows. Brother Mo, can't you get the answer? Yes, I can. Qin Mo handed the mineral water to the young man and said faintly to the other side of the phone, that's it for now. Send me the course progress later. Almighty Qin didn't think there was anything wrong with what he did. As a big brother, there were some things that he had to stop and nip at the root. Since the young man liked to flirt with people so much, then he should keep him quiet and not get close to girls. However, it wasn't good for others to know about this, especially the young man. People in the rebellious stage of adolescence probably didn't want to be controlled like this. Thinking of this, Qin Mo glanced at Fu Jiu next to him. Fu Jiu took the mineral water and drank a few mouthfuls. Her white neck and smooth chin always gave people a kind of indescribable beauty. As if aware of Qin Mo's gaze, the young man turned his head. 2 or 3 strands of his silver hair stood up, and he winked at him with his left eye with a slight smile. Qin Mo dragged him back to his seat. Once again, he felt that his actions were correct. This guy, he had to make him untouchable. Director Quan was even faster. As soon as he hung up, he called the physics teacher of the lower class. The first thing he asked was, is there any student with the surname Qin among the students you teach? The physics teacher was also stunned by Director Quan's words. There is a boy whose surname is Qin. What does he look like? What about their living conditions? If they were young Master Qin's relatives, even if they were distant relatives, their families wouldn't be too bad. The physics teacher shook his head. He's a very ordinary student. He's slightly plump, and his family sells breakfast. That's not it. If it's not a distant relative, what else could it be? Could it be, because of girls? Director Quan seemed to have come to a sudden realization. He sternly warned, in the future, this kind of table arrangement must be for the boys and the girls. Young Master Qin's girlfriend is definitely in there. That's why young Master Qin specifically called him. Chapter 131. Director Quan thought to himself, that was before. He didn't know that young Master Qin's girlfriend was among these girls. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such a thing even if he was beaten to death. However, he still needed to have some manners when dealing with his subordinates. Teacher Zhang, this isn't being conservative. Director Quan thought of young Master Qin's words as he said, it's true that boys and girls sitting at the same table can stimulate boys' learning attitude, but it is also easy for these children to have a wrong feeling. To prevent puppy love, we should start with the arrangement of tables. Physics teacher, okay, that's it. Just remember it, Director Quan said seriously, how are your physics studies going recently? What are the key points? Send them to my email. After Qin Mo received the material, he only glanced at it a few times. Then, he began to take the pen and mark the key points one by one, circling all the possible questions. What was even more amazing was that he found 4 questions from the big questions and tapped on them with his slender fingers. When you take the monthly test, you will be tested on one of these 4 questions. If you don't know how to do it, just write down the answers. Your memory should be good. Not bad. The young man smiled calmly with a lollipop in his mouth. In fact, every hacker had a good memory, especially when it came to data. If it weren't for the fact that Lord Jiu didn't like physics, she wouldn't have been so miserable and needed the Almighty to tutor her. However, this man was really amazing. He could get so many big questions right. Then, he could just fill in the multiple choice questions in front and he should be able to pass. When Fu Jiu thought of this, she immediately became happy. She showed her white canine teeth. Brother Mo, since you can control the scores, shouldn't we be dismissed now? You can control the scores? Qin Mo raised his good-looking eyebrows. Fu Jiu pointed at the test paper. Here, here, and here. Altogether, it's enough to pass. How can a student taught by me, Qin Mo, only get a passing grade? The man's tone was very indifferent, but he was naturally noble and domineering. Fu Jiu, why did she feel that letting a straight-A student like the Almighty teach her physics was simply a trap? A straight-A student's requirement for scores was not on the same level as a slacker like her. She just wanted to pass, not to become a physics enthusiast. But she had no choice. After all, she still needed the Almighty's help. If one were to think about it carefully, there would be benefits to it. Compared to being tortured by all kinds of formulas, she was more used to memorizing the questions. Thinking of this, Fu Jiu began to nibble on her pen again, working hard. When it was almost 10:30, she scratched the back of her head and frowned. It was already so late. Brother Mo, should we call it a day? Qin Mo was still in a video conference. He paused it calmly and glanced sideways at the youngster with fluffy silver hair. His gaze was deep. Sure. When Fu Jiu heard this, she stretched her waist lazily and smiled devilishly. She packed her things and was about to leave. It shouldn't be hard to get a taxi home at 10:30. Chapter 132. She was going to wear it. When did she say she was going to wear pajamas? What's with the pajamas? She was the one who was going home. Fu Jiu turned her head and looked at the man's sexy and handsome face. She raised her eyebrows. Brother Mo, I think we have a fundamental problem with our communication. It's too late. Uncle Zhang isn't here. It's not safe for you to go back alone. Qin Mo's voice was very calm. He crossed his long legs and sat back on the sofa. There are so many guest rooms. Just pick one to sleep in. Fu Jiu curled up her lips. It's safe to take a taxi back. You want to take a taxi around here? Qin Mo glanced at the young man and threw Fu Jiu's packed school bag back onto the wooden shelf. His indifferent tone was devoid of any emotion. Fortunately, this world sometimes looks at one's looks, not IQ. Fu Jiu. The Almighty was attacking her again. However, the entire Chang'an street didn't allow foreign cars to enter, so she really couldn't take a taxi. Fu Jiu picked up her phone and said, "Then I'll call my chauffeur to pick me up." Hearing that, Qin Mo's left hand, which was holding the business tablet, paused for a moment. Then, his eyes slowly narrowed, and there was an endless coldness in them. Is it hard for you to sleep here? Fu Jiu stopped dialing. She felt that the Almighty was quite tired after tutoring her for 2 hours. She couldn't just leave after using him. At least, she had to find an excuse to leave. If it was Saturday, I would have gone to bed. Today is Thursday, and I have to go to school tomorrow. I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep if we change places. Qin Mo looked up at the young man. Then, he picked up the tablet and stood up. He patted Fu Jiu's left cheek lightly. When did you become a good student who attended classes on time? Don't find such a bluffing excuse. I'll go to the company tomorrow and take you to school on the way. Now, go to Aunt Zhang's to get your pajamas. Or do you want to study one more question before going to bed? Fu Jiu, could this alternative of choosing one more question be called an alternative? Her chest was still bandaged. She was afraid that she would be exposed if she slept here. Fu Jiu lowered her eyes, thinking about how to reject him. There was a knock on the door. Young Master, 9th Young Master's pajamas are ready. It was Auntie Zhang. When she heard that the young man was going to stay at the Qin family, she was very surprised. Young Master was becoming more and more humane. He even invited a friend to stay for the night. If Madame knew about such a major change, she would definitely ask for all the information about this 9th Young Master. In fact, even Aunt Zhang herself was curious. Which child of the Fu family was this? How could he get along so well with their young master? Qin Mo retracted his hands from the youngster's face. Come in. Aunt Zhang held the pajamas with both hands, and she looked at Fu Jiu with eyes full of kindness. Young Master Jiu, I see that you are thinner than young master, so I brought you the clothes that young master wore in middle school. I hope young Master Jiu doesn't mind. Fu Jiu could reject the Almighty, but if she didn't accept the pajamas now, she would be hurting an old man's heart. He thought about He Honghua, then looked at Aunt Zhang's sparkling eyes. Our Lord Jiu only hesitated for a moment. He was thinking about how to say something so that Aunt Zhang wouldn't be too disappointed. Chapter 133. Almost instantly, Fu Jiu saw Aunt Zhang's eyes darken. She quickly reached out and smiled lightly, looking very handsome. How could I not be satisfied? Aunt Zhang's beef hot pot is so delicious, the clothes you prepared must be comfortable to wear. Aunt Zhang's face brightened up again after being praised by the young man. She even blushed inexplicably. Young Master Jiu was too gentle, completely different from their young master. Fu Jiu was planning to continue to confuse him. Qin Mo interrupted the young man's words and said in a very calm voice, "If you like Aunt Zhang, you can sleep here tonight." Fu Jiu. The Almighty was tricking her again. Ah. Young Master Jiu is not staying here tonight. Aunt Zhang looked at the handsome young man in front of her and said rather disappointedly, "I even cooked supper for ninth young master. It's congee with pork and century eggs. Young master doesn't usually eat such things." Now that there's finally someone to eat it, Fu Jiu thought about it carefully. The bathroom and bedroom were both independent, so even if she stayed here, as long as they were in different rooms, no one would find out. At this point, if she refused again, the Almighty, who was a master detective who dabbled in psychology, might even suspect her. The main thing was that she couldn't bear to see a woman who was good to her sad, especially a woman like Aunt Zhang. Of course I'm staying here. Fu Jiu curled her lips like a rich young master. She reached out with her left hand for the pajamas and tucked Aunt Zhang's hair behind her ears. I love food so much, so how could I let go of Aunt Zhang's homemade century egg and lean meat porridge? Aunt Zhang heard this and was as happy as a child. I'll bring it to young Master Jiu right now. Okay. No one could see the crying face of our Lord Jiu. Staying here meant that she had to sleep the whole night with bandages. Any girl would know that it was torture. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Qin Mo turned around and continued his video conference. His fluent English was mixed with a few words of French. It was obvious that the conference was not a small one. It must have been hard on the Almighty, who could still find time to use Aunt Zhang to trick her in such a business conference. He was indeed a sly businessman. Fu Jiu complained as she planned to change out of the pajamas while the Almighty was still in the conference. Otherwise, if something like what happened in the locker room happened again, it would be hard for her to deal with it. To prevent the Almighty from tricking her again, Fu Jiu went downstairs to confirm her room with Aunt Zhang and familiarize herself with the environment. Different beds meant a higher degree of safety. There didn't seem to be anything to worry about. With this thought in mind, Fu Jiu took out her modified laptop and entered the game leisurely. As soon as she logged into her account, she saw that someone had sent her over 100 friend requests. Fu Jiu opened the page, and it was all, awarding you a slap of pleasure, idol, why didn't you add me? Idol, hero is too much. How dare he say that I maliciously harass players? I only sent you 100 messages. I was going to send you 1,000. I have money in the game. Idol, didn't you say you were going to carry me through dungeons and send me flying? Why haven't you appeared yet? Idol, why aren't you playing? Have you been kidnapped by the Almighty? Chapter 134. Fu Jiu put a lollipop in her mouth, put the notebook on her long legs, and began to reply, the Almighty didn't kidnap me, I successfully moved into his house. She couldn't afford to lose on the battlefield. Even though the Almighty did trick her. Live, in the Almighty's house. Award a slap of pleasure sent a horrified emoji. Student Feng didn't expect that his idol would tell him such shocking news as soon as he appeared. Fu Jiu wasn't good at lying, but since she had already bragged, she had to cover it up as much as possible. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for her handsome and domineering image. What's so surprising about that? If I can let him sleep on my bed in the future, will you still jump up in excitement? Sleep. Sleep on the bed. Student Feng's face started to turn red again, and he said righteously, "Idol, let's not talk about such a dirty topic, or we will be reported." Fu Jiu was amused by the screen, and she was about to raise her hand to type. A tall and slender figure came down from behind her, and he said in a deep voice, "If I can let him sleep on my bed in the future." Fu Jiu's back stiffened when she heard that familiar and cold voice. The last thing she regretted in her life was that she didn't lock the door just now. Who knew that the Almighty would sneak in while she was playing games? He didn't even make a sound when he walked. Did he think he was a cat? Qin Mo sneered first, then turned his face to look at the young man in front of him. His eyes were as deep as the flowing water in the dark night. "So you want to sleep on the same bed with me that much? It seems like there is no need to arrange another guest room for you. It's a waste of space." His expression didn't show any emotion, but it was enough to chill the air around them. Fu Jiu coughed lightly. "This is a misunderstanding." "Really?" Qin Mo raised his eyebrows and took the young man's notebook. He put his fingertips on it, and he said casually and lazily, "This kind of misunderstanding is really rare. It's the same reason why you got last place in your exams." Fu Jiu, every verbal attack was so technical. Seriously. How did the Almighty develop this habit? What's so great about being a top student? In the future, don't add people in the game, even teammates. It will affect your intelligence, Qin Mo said faintly as he operated the youngster's account. Naturally, he kicked awarding you a slap of pleasure out of Spade Z's friend list. Then, he moved his mouse and took a screenshot to send to the game staff, specifically complaining about Student Feng. Fu Jiu was caught off guard as she watched the Almighty's fluid movements. She thought that baby Feng was going to go crazy this time. Student Feng was indeed angry. Was he bullying him for being rich? He had only chatted with his idol for a few days. He hadn't even given him a gold diamond yet. He hadn't done anything. Why did she say that he was harassing her? No, he had to find out who had complained about him. Therefore, after using some connections, he decisively went to privately poke the staff of the game. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't investigated, but now that he did, he was even sadder. The person who reported him was actually his idol himself. Not only did he report me, he even blacklisted me. Why? Student Feng was deflated. He sat in front of the computer and felt wronged. He sent a crying emoji to Spade Z, "Idol, even if you want to report me, you can't blacklist me." Chapter 135. The man's indifferent voice didn't reveal any emotion. "To prevent you from spouting nonsense, you can use my account and I'll use yours before the esports selection contest." Fu Jiu smiled lightly. "Brother Mo, that's not a good idea. We use different skills in the game. As a hacker, can't you control different skills in the game?" He handed the youngster a towel. "Don't put my IQ on the same level as yours. Write down your account number and wash your claws. Or do you prefer me to wash them for you?" Qin Mo's smile turned colder, his eyes filled with nobility as he handed the youngster a towel. Fu Jiu just remembered that she hadn't showered yet. She couldn't care less about comforting baby Feng in the game. She took the bath towel from the Almighty's hand and rushed into the bathroom. This time, she didn't forget to lock the door, and she even locked it twice. Fu Jiu completely believed that the Almighty would rip people's clothes when he was shameless. It was better for her to take the safe route. Thinking of this, Fu Jiu raised her eyes and looked at herself in the mirror. She was so handsome, but she was still threatened. Sigh, Qin Mo seemed to notice the depression of the young man in the bathroom, so he stood up and walked slowly to the door. He put one hand in the waistband of his khaki pants, and he looked very cool. His voice was still indifferent, but it had a natural sense of command. You can use the game currency in the account, but you are not allowed to add people. Game currency? Fujio's long and narrow eyes lit up. She turned sideways and opened the door. She put her arms on the side and leaned closer to Chin Mo. Her handsome face was full of evil smile. Brother Mo, don't worry. I have the basic ethics of using an account. For example, he didn't expect the youngster to open the door. Looking at the person in front of him, his silver hair was wet. He freed one hand and pushed Fujio back. Take a good shower. Fujio didn't know what to say. Instead, she pushed him back. This time, Fujio didn't care how cold the Almighty's tone was. She smiled brightly, locked the door again, and started to take off her clothes. But when she was halfway through, she still felt a little awkward. She could sense that Chin Mo hadn't left. He was sitting on the sofa outside the bathroom. It seemed like he was still in a meeting. Even without the sound of water, she could still hear him speaking in English and French. It wasn't easy to remove the outer layer, only the inner bandage remained. Fujio glanced at herself and sat on the edge of the bathtub. She stretched out her long legs and bent one of them to the left. She turned her face to the side and carefully unwrapped the white cloth in front of her chest bit by bit. As she moved, her silver hair drooped down and hit the attractive side of her face. It made her look very handsome, like a beautiful young man full of vitality. But at this moment, if Chin Mo came in, he would definitely find out that the younger brother he recognized wasn't a younger brother, but a younger sister. Fujio, the legendary gay who liked men. In fact, she was always straight. But no one could have imagined that she was a girl, because he needed to continue using the strip of cloth after he took a shower. He couldn't let it get wet, nor could he tear it. Finally, the last layer was opened by her, and the pair of pure white jade rabbits were about to jump out. There was a sudden knock on the door behind her. Chapter 136. Almost in the next second, she picked up her shirt and put it in front of her. However, Chin Mo didn't come in. He just stood outside the door, his side profile elegant and handsome. He had a pile of common toiletries in his hands. Open the door, I have something for you. Why did he have to give it to her now? Fujio pressed her shirt and said, I'll take it after I take a shower. There's no shower gel in there, how are you going to shower? Chin Mo raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, open the door and take what Auntie Zhang prepared for you. After he said that, Chin Mo saw that there was no movement inside. His slender fingers were on the doorknob, and just as he was about to turn the lock, the wooden door in front of him opened a little, and the young man poked his head out. He didn't seem to be wearing any clothes. His white neck and delicate collarbones were exposed, and only his handsome face could be seen. Behind him was the special mist of the bathroom, and even the young man's thick black eyelashes were steaming. Brother Mo, where are the things? Fujio said it naturally with a slight smile on her lips. Chin Mo glanced at the young man's smooth collarbones, then looked away and threw a bag of toiletries to him. Fujio raised her hand to catch it and whistled. Chin Mo didn't know what to do with this guy who was flirting all the time, so he simply closed the door and locked the young man inside. Out of sight, out of mind. Fujio finally let out a sigh of relief. If the door was opened a little more, she would definitely be discovered. Exposing herself like this would make the Almighty impatient, but it was better than coming in directly. Fujio thought of this and looked at the shower gel in her hands. Then she raised her right hand and finally took off the last layer of the white tape. The person in the bronze mirror in the bathroom changed from a handsome and devilish young man to an extremely beautiful girl. She had the same silver hair, but because of the pair of jade rabbits in front of her chest, Fujio's face looked even more alluring. Her figure was very good. She had long legs and a slender waist. Her back was pulled back, and one could vaguely see her flat abdomen. There was a rather deep waistline. Her jade rabbit was also very white and tender. Standing in the misty bathroom, the curve was very obvious. In fact, because it was too full, it gave people the urge to rub it. Fujio lay in the bathtub and closed her eyes, letting the water drip down onto her fair and handsome face. Her long eyelashes cast a shadow under her eyelids, and together with her silver-gray hair by her ears, there was an indescribable sense of beauty to her. If Almighty Qin saw her like this. Fujio had a feeling that, the Almighty wouldn't let her off easily. But fortunately, she had developed well, she didn't let the white cloth wrap around her. But of her body, she didn't of him. She was in the second half of the semester now, and she had already started puberty. She didn't know if the white cloth would still work when spring came next year. Fujio tilted her head. It seemed that sometimes being too big could be a source of trouble. She had to be more careful when she went out later. She had seen the pajamas just now, and they weren't very safe. She was afraid that even with the white cloth, there would still be a little bulge. Thinking of this, Fujio suddenly opened her eyes and pressed her silver hair with her left hand. Her action was still very handsome. Chapter 137. Qin Mo's attention was still on the business meeting. On his left was a transparent cup filled with water. On the other side of the meeting, Manager Feng felt very strange. CEO Qin's state today was obviously a little absent-minded. Regarding the esports selection contest, I have a new idea. Qin Mo opened his mouth after the business partner had finished speaking. With his Bluetooth earpiece on, he always looked more commercial and aesthetic than most people. Since we are looking for the most valuable new member, we can give up on the previous internal candidates and let them compete again. Give up on the predetermined candidate. The managers of the Qin's club looked at each other in dismay. Qin Mo's partner was a European. He lifted his lips and smiled helplessly. But Qin, you were the one who came up with the plan. That was the previous Qin group, not the Qin group that I took over. Qin Mo's voice was indifferent. Even in front of a business partner, he was calm and professional. Talents can never be selected through internal selection. I believe Robert has heard of this saying, mastermind in civil, the master is among the people. Hearing this, Robert's eyes lit up. He shrugged his shoulders and said, all right, Qin, you have successfully convinced me once again. With you around, the Qin family is indeed a treasured sword. Qin Mo slid his fingers. He didn't deny it, nor did he act humble. Thank you. Qin, I like your personality. Robert laughed. I heard that you've started playing on a private server recently. And he even went to a live stream room. Our teams are all very concerned about who had the ability to make you pay attention to a small stream. Qin Mo's expression didn't change at all. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette, holding it between his slender fingers. He looked noble and upper class. It's not a matter of ability. That's my brother. Brother? Robert expressed his surprise. Secretary Liang was in charge of meeting minutes. Usually, he would sit in on these international meetings. But after hearing the word younger brother, Secretary Liang felt a little uncomfortable. President Qin, didn't you say he wasn't your biological brother? Why do you have such a doting tone even in a meeting? Robert was still asking, Qin, when did you have a younger brother? I remember that you're the only one in the Qin Corporation, right? God brother, all right, let's not talk about this anymore. He's still bathing. Qin Mo glanced up and glanced at the clock on the wall. I'm going to check on that guy. That's all, good night. Robert was extremely curious. In his impression, Qin was someone who was hard to get close to. She really didn't expect that man to treat her brother so well. In the past, he did not like Chinese people because some Chinese people would neglect their families when they had business. Now, looking at Qin's appearance, he was even more certain that he would cooperate with the Qin Corporation to the end. The members of the club didn't have much of a reaction when they saw that. Secretary Liang, on the other hand, felt a headache coming on. The CEO had only known the young master of the Fu family for a few days, and he was already bringing him home for a shower. No, he couldn't let his imagination run wild. The CEO must have found a companion because he had been living alone for too long. But even if he wanted to find someone, he should find a woman, right? Chapter 138. Secretary Liang was really in a dilemma. Should he call Madam or his boss? But what should he say if he called them? He couldn't say that Boss Qin was turned gay by a man, right? Different from Secretary Liang's active thoughts, Feng Shang, on the other side of the game, only thought that he was the most pathetic person in the world. So when his brother knocked on the door and came in, he didn't put away his laptop. He looked depressed and haggard. Manager Feng thought that his brother didn't have enough money in the game, so he immediately added 3,000 yuan into the account and asked, "Is it enough?" "No, it's not about the money." Even though Feng Shang stuttered, he still felt that today's incident was very sad. Feng Yi raised his eyebrows. "Then what is it?" Feng Shang was just about to tell his brother that he knew Spade Z, but on second thought, if his brother knew about this, he would definitely know that he had participated in the internal signing that day. Thus, he just shook his head and didn't say anything. Feng Yi, on the other hand, wanted to complain to his brother. "I'm going to be very busy from now on. I don't know what's going on with CEO Qin, but he suddenly cancelled all the internal signings eligibility to join the team. If they want to join the team, they'll have to participate in this year's esports selection contest. I have to rearrange the plan, and I won't be able to go on a date at the nightclub in the future." I don't know. In fact, Feng Shang knew. He always felt that Almighty Qin's decision was to stand up for his idol no matter how he looked at it. Could it be that his idol was really taken away by the Almighty? The more Feng Shang thought about it, the more depressed he felt. He wanted to raise his idol, but why did Almighty Qin beat him to it? Fu Jiu didn't know that someone wanted to raise her. She held a towel in her left hand and casually wiped her short silver hair. She walked out of the bathroom barefooted. The ends of her hair were still dripping water, and the water fell on her pale lips. Her skin was white and supple, and it was as clear as jade. From the bridge of her nose to her chin, she was impeccably beautiful. She was so clean that people couldn't help but take a second look. The young man had a lollipop in his mouth as he slowly walked toward Qin Mo. That lazy look made him look like a demon deacon in a comic, very handsome. After the bath, the youngster seemed to have become even more eye-catching. With such an eye-catching person around, Qin Mo couldn't continue with his work. He closed all the documents and placed the tablet at the side. He glanced up at the youngster and looked into his eyes. He raised his right hand. "Give me the towel." Fu Jiu didn't resist the Almighty at this moment. After all, she was wearing pajamas. Her goal was to protect her front, so she handed the towel to the man. Qin Mo shook off the water droplets that landed on the back of his hand, his voice calm. "Lower your head." Fu Jiu lifted the corner of her lips. The Almighty wanted to wipe her hair. Coincidentally, it wasn't convenient for her to wipe it herself, so she just handed it over to the Almighty. That way, she wouldn't expose herself if too many water droplets dripped onto the front. Thinking of this, Fu Jiu leaned over obediently. Qin Mo looked at the furry head in front of him. He raised his right hand, but it wasn't a gentle one. After all, Almighty Qin believed that he should treat his younger brother the same way he treated his younger brother. A boy didn't need to be gentle with him. Chapter 139. When Aunt Zhang came in with the supper, she saw this scene. She almost dropped the bowl of pork and century egg congee in her hands. The young master in front of her didn't seem like the young master she knew. The young master in the past was cold and indifferent, as if everything was in his hands, and nothing could arouse his interest. Could it be that the young master had been alone since he was young, and now that he had a friend, he was like this? Aunt Zhang thought about it and decided to call Madam tomorrow. It was too late today. She was afraid that if she told Madam, she would be too excited to sleep. Qin Mo also saw Aunt Zhang standing at the door. He retracted his hand and said in a calm tone, "Okay, you can go eat the supper Aunt Zhang made for you." Hearing that, Fu Jiu was even happier. She raised her fluffy head and smiled at Aunt Zhang. "Thank you, Aunt Zhang." Aunt Zhang quickly waved her hands. Seeing that the young man didn't care about the heat and took a sip of her porridge, she was also happy. She put a big bowl of porridge in front of him. Fu Jiu didn't worry at all that she couldn't finish it. The best thing in life was to have hot meat porridge after physics class at 11 o'clock at night. Especially in Jiang City, the weather at the end of autumn was starting to get cold. There were layers and layers of fog outside, so eating something warmed up the stomach. Moreover, she could splurge in the game while eating. Most importantly, she was very interested in how much money the Almighty had in his account. Based on the Almighty's attitude when he gave her something last time, he definitely had a lot of money. Fu Jiu logged into the account the Almighty gave her while eating the porridge. She opened the account's information list in high spirits. 1 0, 2 zeros, 3 zeros, 8 zeros, 9 zeros. 9 zeros in virtual game currency, even if converted into RMB, would be worth more than 1 million. Fu Jiu looked sideways at the account the Almighty had logged into, and it only had a few thousand yuan. Was this the difference between a top student and a bad student? Fu Jiu lowered her head and bit the spoon in her mouth. Unfair. She had to find a way to earn more money. Fu Jiu thought of this and seemed to remember something. Right, baby Feng. Fu Jiu opened the page and saw, awarding you a slap of pleasure, flirting with girls in the world channel. Based on what he said, Fu Jiu locked onto Feng Shang's exact location and sent him a message. Are you there? After Feng Shang sent his brother away, he sat down and saw Almighty Qin talking to him in the game. He choked on his saliva and couldn't help but cough. Could it be a fake account? This was Feng Shang's first reaction. What's more, student Feng was still thinking, this fake account was practically knocking on his gun's muzzle. He had to teach him a lesson. Wait a minute, there was a ranking above that person's head, and above it were 2 domineering symbols, Supreme Alliance. Student Feng couldn't be more familiar with this symbol. The team under the Qin Corporation Club. Was it really Almighty Qin talking to him? Feng Shang felt shocked. His first reaction wasn't to reply to Qin Mo in the game. Instead, he clicked on Spade Z's username and sent a string of messages to verify it. Idle, idle. Almighty Qin actually asked if I was there. How should I answer him? Chapter 140. As expected, this fellow did not look at him. He would do something flirtatious. Qin Mo's gaze turned cold. It was as though there were countless clouds churning in his eyes. No one could see what was hidden in those clouds. It was just that the aura around him had clearly become colder. Fu Jiu didn't know that the Almighty had his eyes on her. She bit her spoon with her white teeth, emptied her hands, and typed beautifully, "Baby Feng, what are you doing? Why didn't you reply me?" Feng Shang's expression changed, and he immediately sent a screenshot to Spade Z. Look, the Almighty even called me Baby Feng. Idle, do you think the Almighty, is he secretly in love with me? Qin Mo frowned. He almost crushed the custom-made mouse in his right hand and threw it away. However, there was no trace of anger on his face. Instead, his eyes were extremely cold and the corners of his mouth curled up. It wasn't very warm. Everyone in the industry knew that Qin Mo was the scariest when he was in this state. There were many second-generation officials in the military compound, but none of them were like Qin Mo. He was skilled and ruthless. He had been like this since he was young. Qin Mo didn't reply. Instead, he reached for the glass of water beside him, crossed his long legs, and took a sip of water as if he was watching a show. The curve of his chin made him look like a young master of a warlord during the Republic of China, cold and noble. Fu Jiu waited for a while and saw that the other side was obviously online, but he didn't reply to her message, so she typed a string of words to Feng Shang. Baby Feng, it's me, Fu Jiu. I'm using the Almighty's account. Feng Shang was still thinking that other than his idol, even if Almighty Qin confessed to him, he would decisively blacklist him. He didn't expect to see such a sentence when he opened the message. Feng Shang was stunned. Then what about the idol's account? Of course it's the Almighty who's using it. Also, I have to clear my name. The person who blacklisted you and complained about you was also the Almighty. Fu Jiu thought that she could finally trick the Almighty for once. She typed happily, he has been using my account since the beginning. When Feng Shang saw this, he turned back to look at his conversation with Spade Z. He was on the verge of tears. He typed without stuttering. Idol, why did you give your account to the Almighty? This is bad. Miserable? Fu Jiu didn't understand. What's so miserable about it? Feng Shang felt that he couldn't explain it in such a short time, so he sent a screenshot of the chat to Fu Jiu. Fu Jiu was happily eating her porridge. After all, she was now using the Almighty's account, and she was a real rich person in the game. Her 9 digits in profile data was not a lie. Later, she would ask Feng Shang to cooperate with her to take on a big mission to clear a dungeon. This time, she would raise the price a bit higher and get some fresh blood. Otherwise, it would be a waste of the virtual currency in the Almighty's account. However, the moment she curled her thin lips and clicked on the message, all her beautiful plans came to an abrupt halt and disappeared at lightning speed. Chapter 141. Baby Feng. Qin Mo opened his mouth. His voice was so low that anyone who heard it would know that he wasn't in a good mood. Fu Jiu explained with a smile, that's just a nickname that won't make people feel too distant. Hearing that, Qin Mo tilted his head and curled up his thin lips. He was very cold. So intimate that people will think that I'm secretly in love with him? This is definitely Baby Feng's problem. He is a person who thinks too much. Fu Jiu looked very serious. Qin Mo curled up his thin lips coldly. Obviously, he wasn't satisfied with this excuse. He pinched Fu Jiu's chin and used all his strength with his fingers. His handsome face got closer and he reminded the young man in a low voice, if I find out that you flirt with people on my account again, you won't be able to sleep tonight. Fu Jiu could sense the danger emanating from this man, which was different from the previous few times. However, Qin Mo didn't make things difficult for her. He only complained about Feng Shang again after the warning. When a user was complained about, they would be banned for 10 minutes. Today, Baby Feng had been complained about so many times. This was no different from being locked in a small dark room. Fu Jiu was thinking about this when Qin Mo said, you should be glad that he is your teammate in the upcoming esports selection contest. Otherwise, he won't be able to use this account anymore. Fu Jiu absolutely believed in the Almighty's power in the game, so she silently lit a candle for Baby Feng. Feng Shang also received the news of being complained about. He was a chatterbox in the game, and it was terrible to be silenced like this. The main thing was that he didn't know what was going on with his idol and young Master Qin. Young Master Qin wouldn't punish his idol on the spot after seeing the content just now, right? However, there was one thing that Feng Shang noticed. Young Master Qin actually gave his account to someone else. That game account was worth more than a few 100,000 yuan. Back then, before young Master Qin became a professional team, someone offered 100,000 yuan to buy his account. That person didn't expect that the account he wanted to buy would be played by the powerful young Master Qin of Jiang City. Not only did he offend young Master Qin, but he never showed his face in the game again. In young Master Qin's words, even if he didn't want what he used, he would seal it and not give it to anyone else. But now, young Master Qin had actually given that account to his idol, and he had handed it over for such a long time. If this matter were to be known by his big brother, it would definitely cause a huge storm. Feng Shang was thinking that he would also exchange accounts with his idol in the future. He couldn't fall behind young Master Qin in everything. Fu Jiu didn't think too much about it. She just wanted to bring Feng Shang to a dungeon this time. She had never seen Feng Shang operate before. She would be able to understand everything once she went through the dungeon. Then, she would be able to make adjustments to the entire team based on what she knew. Brother Mo, do you want to run a dungeon with me? Fu Jiu tilted her head and asked Qin Mo. Her silver hair looked exceptionally soft under the light. From Almighty Qin's point of view, this was the young man's way of admitting his mistake. The coldness in his eyes finally subsided a little, and he nodded slightly. Then, he moved his mouse and sent a message to Fu Jiu's side based on their intimacy level. Chapter 142. In the past, whenever Feng Shang saw the game name Spade Z, he would be very, very happy. But today, when he entered the dungeon, he couldn't wait to avoid that name. Perhaps it was because he had seen young Master Qin in person, but student Feng Shang felt that the game character standing in front of him was like young Master Qin himself. Dressed in an ancient fur cloak, he looked like a character from a comic book. He had the ability to freeze, and just by standing there, he could make the air around him turn cold. Feng Shang swallowed his saliva with difficulty and leaned closer to Fu Jiu. The team that sent out the invitation didn't expect that Almighty Qin himself would accept their invitation, and he even brought 2 people into the team. Spade Z was no stranger to them, and the main thing was that there was, awarding you a slap of pleasure, a very famous pay-to-win player. For a moment, they couldn't bear to look at those 3 people. One had to know that every single one of them was famous and powerful. Let's not talk about Almighty Qin and Spade Z. Even, awarding you a slap of pleasure, was very well known in the game, and you could see him on the rich list every day. The strange thing was that this person would always flood the screen when he entered a dungeon, and he would be even more unrestrained when he saw a pretty girl. Why was it so quiet this time? While the rest of the players were still wondering, Fu Jiu had already started commanding. Compared to her low-level account, the Almighty had a fully equipped main account, so it wasn't too easy for him to clear the dungeon. He went all the way up, killing everything in his path. But Spade Z's account didn't move at all. He didn't even make a move. It was useless. There was a female player in that team who wasn't good at playing, but at least she knew how to make a few moves. That Spade Z didn't even know how to use potions. If Almighty Qin hadn't brought him here, such a person would have been kicked out of the team. The more that female player saw Spade Z walking slowly, the more annoyed she felt. Why did Almighty Qin treat such a person differently? He obviously had no skills, but he followed behind the team and leeched off experience, acting like he was a peerless master. It was so annoying. In the beginning, the female player was still holding it in. Later on, when she was unable to defend in time and lost more than half of her HP, she was completely enraged. On the other side of the computer, he sneered, and even his tone was cold and mocking. The most anticipated rookie king of Zone C, with amazing mechanics and fast hand speed, who was poached by the Qin Club with a large sum of money. Turns out he's just a weakling who only knows how to follow the Almighty to leech experience. He doesn't even know when the monsters are approaching, not to mention, from what I see, those first kills aren't necessarily taken by him. At the very least, he doesn't know how to save people. Teaming up with such a person, forget about first kills, he might not even be able to clear this dungeon. Hero was a game that could speak, which was why Hero was loved by so many professional teams. It could professionalize the game and attract people with its voice after becoming a god. The female player had turned on the voice chat. Although her voice was sweet, the sarcasm in her words was clearly uncomfortable. Chapter 143. So, as soon as she said this, the game screen fell into a dead silence. Fujio was still holding a lollipop in her mouth. Her hand paused, and she sent out another big move. Her finger technique was very beautiful. The other players didn't react so quickly. But right at this moment, the biggest monster appeared, and it used a fireball-like special attack on their team. Not to mention the others, even a master like, awarding you a slap of pleasure, was caught off guard and lost half of his HP. Fortunately, he had good skills, and he could retreat instantly. The rest of the players weren't so lucky. They were directly knocked down to the ground, and they died very miserably. Logically speaking, when a team had 3 players left, and one of them was dying, it was impossible for them to win this round. But to everyone's surprise, Spade Z, who had been quiet all this time, turned his sword's shadow and created a magnificent light behind Fujio. The light almost filled up the entire screen, and the dazzling silver color was so dazzling that people couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. Except for Fujio, who was protected by Almighty Qin, her murderous aura didn't seem to diminish because of the death of the others. Instead, under Almighty Qin's cover, she directly jumped up, and even her black battle robe had a silver glow as she used a killing blow. Under the dazzling special effects, people saw an unprecedented top-level cooperation. Handsome, unruly, and invincible. The whole team was stunned to see this scene, and from their eyes to their arms, they felt an unprecedented shock. That technique was clearly the 3000 knife cutting that Almighty Qin was best at. Why could Spade Z use Almighty Qin's unique skill? Who was the person controlling Spade Z right now? This was the question in everyone's heart. Apart from the question, they were also shocked. It was a boiling feeling that came from the depths of their blood. Although they had heard too many legends about Almighty Qin was now a god. He used a top-notch account, and no matter what tricks he used, there would always be a very small voice in people's hearts saying that Almighty Qin's strength was inseparable from the account he used. But now, a new account. Since he had used the most difficult move, the 3000 knife cutting. Although the new account had the halo of the Rookie King, such an ultimate move would never be used by a veteran player who had not played the game since the hero was released. That was obviously Almighty Qin. Other than Almighty Qin, none of the teams in the country could use this killer move. Not only could it protect people, but it could also support attacks at the same time. The legendary 3000 saber slashes, 10,000 monsters retreat. The screen of the computer was still shining with silver light. The reflection in everyone's eyes made their pupils sway. Immediately after, they heard a loud boom coming from their earphones. The monster collapsed heavily, stirring up a layer of snow-like dust in the surroundings. At that moment, the names of Spade Z, Qin Mo, awarding you a slap of pleasure, and the others appeared on the front page of the entire server, hanging high up at the top. 3 times in a row, the first kill was completed. Chapter 144. The female player who had been making sarcastic remarks was dumbfounded. The hand holding the mouse was still trembling. The news of the team had already exploded. Everyone was talking about the ultimate move, 3000 knife cutting. After the silver light dissipated, the team members automatically resurrected. At this moment, Fujio moved and sent a string of words over. From the beginning of the dungeon, I told you to protect yourselves and not get killed by monsters. Even if Spade Z didn't save anyone, he didn't lose any HP. As for you, little Ripple, I was the one who picked you up. I'm the commander. If I don't say anything, don't move. You even went so far away to kill monsters. You don't even know this basic command. Is this your first time playing hero? The female player felt wronged by the accusation. She tried to defend herself, but the moment she opened her mouth, she pretended to be pitiful. I'm just afraid that the monsters over there will hurt you. Fujio raised her eyebrows. Okay, even if it's like what you said, and you're afraid that the monsters will hurt us, so you moved your position randomly. It doesn't matter that you lost HP, just return to the team as soon as possible. Why are you laughing at us? Do you know that because of those words of yours, we almost couldn't get through this? Little Ripple Ripple, I'm telling you, don't think you can escape unscathed after splashing dirty water on others in front of me. From now on, I won't accept any orders from any team that has Little Ripple Ripple in it. I won't take it either. After Feng Shang said this, he directly spent money on the entire server. There were a total of 9 messages, and the entire screen was filled with the same message. Such a scene was really rare. Award a slap of pleasure made an announcement, everyone, listen up. In the future, if there's a team with rippling ripples, don't look for me. Just this one sentence had shaken the entire game. It wasn't just because awarding a slap of pleasure would never make an enemy out of anyone in the game, nor would he specifically reject anyone. It was also because of the 99 full-screen announcements. 100 yuan for a full server announcement. 99, this was simply throwing money away. Holy sh*t. So much money. Awarding you a punch of pleasure candy has always had a lot of money, alright? Tycoon, I just want to say that I want to be friends with you. Am I the only one who's concerned about why the Reward Student Association sent out such a message? I know. Insider information. Did everyone see the record-breaking first clear on the server? Almighty Qin and my big spade led everyone to victory. What about this little Ripple? She didn't listen to the command and lost her HP. She even mocked my big spade's poor operation and said that he didn't deserve the title of Rookie King. In the end, my big spade made a killing blow. Not only did he protect his teammates, but he also dealt a critical blow to the entire arena. This slap to the face was really embarrassing. What? Mocking my big spade? Do you think our haters are fake? In just an instant, thousands of people were stirred up. Even though Spadesy hadn't been here for a long time, he was just an ordinary player. He hadn't gone through any training, but he had crushed countless battlefields with his absolute skills. So Spadesy's reputation in Hero was real. Everyone admired Spadesy from the bottom of their hearts, no matter if it was the players who had been with Fujio in the dungeon or those who had watched the live stream. Once the reason for Rippling Ripple's rejection was revealed, at least 3 team captains joined forces to voice their support. Chapter 145. Instantly. Server-wide bombardment. Because everyone knew that in Zone C, only these few teams were strong. If they wanted to clear a more complicated instance dungeon, they would have to bring them along. This was simply banning Little Ripple. Little Ripple really didn't understand this game. What was this? For a male account, they were going to reject a beauty like her. Little Ripple looked at the message on the screen that she had been kicked out of the team. She angrily threw her mouse, and her expression became extremely ugly. After hearing the noise, Fu Shiming, who was still practicing his hand speed, looked over and frowned. Sister, what's wrong? Little Rippling Ripple's original body was actually Fu Shue'er, Fu Shiming's twin sister. Fu Shue'er's anger hadn't subsided yet. Her chest heaved up and down as she took a big gulp of water. Then she sneered. It's all because of that Spadesy. He thinks he's so great just because Almighty Qin is backing him up. Those otakus who play games also have a hole in their brains. Instead of protecting a beauty like me, they have to stand on the same side as a guy. They even want to jointly reject me. Ha, this is the funniest joke I've ever seen. Spadesy. When Fu Shiming heard this name, his fingers on the keyboard stopped moving. There was a hint of mockery in his eyes. That Zone C's Rookie King. An unorthodox player. That's him. Fu Shue'er didn't care about the computer anymore. She turned around and said to Fu Shiming, his operation isn't bad, but his character is really unflattering. Fu Shiming said proudly, that's because he hasn't seen a professional before. A random player that popped out of nowhere wants to be called a king. What a joke. Fu Shue'er's lips curled up as well. You're right. If it was my younger brother, he would have beaten him so badly that he wouldn't even know which way is north. Such a small character is not worth my time. Fu Ximing lowered his eyes and said indifferently, my goal is the selection contest. Fu Shui winked mischievously. Yes, my genius brother definitely wouldn't be interested in such a person. But I heard that Spade Z will be participating as well, and he will be participating as a member of the He Corporation team. I really don't know where that fat village girl, He Honghua, found Spade Z. He won't participate, Fu Ximing said again. Fu Shui didn't understand. Why? You'll know when the time comes. Fu Ximing said as he logged into his game account. He already had a rough understanding of Spade Z. His mother even gave him a concrete plan. Ever since Spade Z appeared in Hero, he had been taking orders to make money. To put it bluntly, he was just a pauper. Such people were the easiest to deal with. Chapter 146. On the other side of the computer. Qin Mo looked at the verification information on the screen. His eyes were calm as he picked up the cup beside him and took a sip of purified water. He didn't reply right away. Fu Jiu didn't know that Fu Ximing had taken a liking to her account. She was operating the Almighty's account and checking the equipment dropped by the boss just now. She had a handsome smile on her face. Brother Mo, we're quite lucky. Qin Mo casually replied with a before he started replying to the message. He didn't refuse. Instead, he gave Fu Ximing a specific price. But when Fu Ximing saw the price, his face turned green. He tapped his fingers heavily on the screen. 10 million. Spade Z. You're obviously asking for a lion's share. Qin Mo was still sitting like a business king, but his tone was indifferent. If you can't even fork out 10 million, why are you still running a company and talking about business? Because the other party's attitude was too indifferent, as if 10 million was just a small number, Fu Ximing's face turned red after he saw the message. Fu Ximing didn't know why, but at that moment, he remembered what happened in the tennis court today. That embarrassing feeling surged into Fu Ximing's heart again. He originally thought that spending 100,000 or so would be enough to settle the matter. After all, Spade Z loved money so much. Unexpectedly, Fu Ximing's eyes turned gloomy, and he typed fiercely. It's better to have some self-awareness. You're already so poor in the game, and you don't even have a decent set of equipment, let alone in real life. Spade Z, I'm saving you some face by not saying it out loud. Since you don't want to cooperate with us, then we'll meet at the selection contest. I hope you still have the confidence to be so arrogant then. After that, Fu Ximing went offline and called his mom. Mom, it didn't work out. That Spade Z is just a pretentious guy. He even pretended to be rich in front of me, asking for 10 million. Mom, that's a new account. Even if he has a good record in the game, no one has seen how he operates in real life. Why do you have to buy his account for me to use? Ximing. The person on the other side of the phone lowered his voice, as if he was trying to avoid the music of the ball. He continued, Spade Z's account has attracted the attention of all the media in Jiang City. Do you know what this means? This meant that when the selection contest started, this Spade Z would become a headline in the esports news, and he would definitely become famous. He didn't know which expert had given He Honghua pointers behind the scenes for a village girl like her to be enlightened and play such a trick. But now, no one knows who this Spade Z really is. Mom thought about it for a long time, and the best way is to buy this account and put it on you. Then, you can participate as Spade Z. You have the title of a young genius, and with such a popular account, you will definitely become a god. Only then did Fu Ximing understand what his mother meant. He also became anxious. What should we do now? That load has already rejected me. Chapter 147. In Hero, Fujio was still distributing equipment to her teammates. She was very generous to those who supported her in the whole server. She shared all the diamonds that dropped from the first kill with the captains of all the major teams. Awarding you a slap of pleasure, got the best equipment. Fujio had to admit that she was being selfish in this aspect. After all, he was her future teammate. But the others didn't mind. After all, they weren't professional players, so they didn't need to collect materials. They liked more practical things, like diamonds. They didn't care about the other things, so they naturally listened to Fujio's arrangements. To thank them, Fujio even gave them a 20% discount for this order. Seeing this, Chin Mo's right hand that was holding the mouse paused slightly. His deep eyes swept over the computer screen and landed on the two characters who were still whispering to each other. His eyes gradually turned cold. In fact, the main reason why Chin Mo didn't make a move in the beginning was that those two were too close. Did they need to be so close to each other just to play a game? Although he wouldn't interfere too much with young people's business, after all, no one wanted to be controlled when they were 16 or 17 years old. But there were some principles that couldn't be violated. Until now, Chin Mo still hadn't forgotten that this guy in front of him had liked a man, idol. Are you giving all these to me? Feng Sheng didn't expect that his idol would think of him like this even with the Almighty around. Fujio held a lollipop in her mouth, tilted her head, and replied with a line of text, "It'll be useful in the esports competition. I know your skills pretty well. In a few days, our team will meet up, and we'll go to the internet cafe to play a game together." The two of them were chatting in private, so the others only saw that Fujio and Feng Sheng's characters were very close. After Feng Sheng saw that message, he made a sound of surprise before replying, "Idol, did you forget that our team only has you and me? Now it's 3. Fujio smiled, and the corners of her mouth were full of mischief. "That's why I'm online today. Besides, our new teammate is a girl." Feng Sheng was shocked, and he typed faster. Girl. Where is she? I didn't see her. I always thought that we would be a single team." "Idol, why you're not lying to me, are you?" "Baby Feng, as a team member, you must have absolute trust in your team leader." "How could I lie to you?" Fujio looked at his reaction, and her smile widened. "And our new teammate has a good personality. She's a nice girl." Feng Sheng didn't care what kind of girl she was. He had already thought about how he would greet his new teammates when they met in a few days. "Yep, I'll just say that I'll bring her to clear dungeons, fly her, and buy her equipment." He would ask his brother to top up more money for him. While the two of them were chatting happily, the handsome side face of the man on the other side turned cold bit by bit. Fujio was still typing and didn't notice. Chin Mo laughed. His smile was vicious no matter how one looked at it. He placed the cup back in its original position, stood up, and walked towards the youngster on the bed step by step. Chapter 148. Chatting so happily. Chin Mo's voice had always been light, and it sounded even more so at night. It was as if he didn't care about anything, but there was an irresistible coldness in his voice. After hearing the Almighty's question, Fujio raised her head and found that the man was already in front of her. He was standing by the bed with a physics book in his hand. His khaki trousers made him look a lot softer, but the pressure he exuded was still very strong, and he still had the domineering aura of a military third generation. How should she put it? It was a little cool, but also a little cold. The most important thing was that those eyes didn't seem to be very happy. Fujio was still sucking on her lollipop. She didn't know what was going on, but that was what she thought. According to her understanding of the Almighty, he would attack her verbally when he was in a bad mood. Later, she just needed to find a way to flirt with the Almighty, and this problem would be solved. But, to Fujio's surprise, the Almighty didn't play by the rules at all. He asked her again, "Do you like men or women?" Such an elegant and direct question indeed needed a good answer. If she said she liked men, the Almighty would probably throw her out by the collar. If she said she liked women, she didn't want to lie, because it was against her will. But, girls are cute, and boys are handsome. Fujiu smiled with her beautiful peach blossom eyes. She twirled her silver hair with her fingers, and she looked like a rich young master. She leaned against the headboard, looking very handsome and evil. They're all okay. The most important thing is the face. I'm okay with those who are good-looking. All okay. Qin Mo curled up his lips slowly, looking unhappy and playful. You want to say that you like both men and women? Fujiu put on a serious face. Being too handsome will always bring this kind of burden. Who gave you such strong confidence? Qin Mo's voice was very calm. Fujiu thought about it and said seriously, my parents gave birth to me well. But brother Mo, don't worry. Even if I like men, I won't do anything to you. With this answer, there shouldn't be any problem. The Almighty was probably asking her this question because of what she had done before, like wanting to keep the Almighty as a mistress. Fujiu analyzed the reason while replying to Baby Feng's message. She didn't notice the cold light flashing in the man's eyes after he heard her words. If Secretary Liang saw this expression on his CEO's face, he would definitely break into a cold sweat. Because Qin Mo wasn't too happy right now. Almighty Qin thought that no one would want their little brother to have such a rich private life. He was the same. Eating both men and women. Ha, what a great ability. Qin Mo glanced at the silver-haired youngster who was still hugging his notebook and chatting away. His expression didn't change at all. His face was still as handsome as a god. His slender fingers moved and directly unbuttoned his trousers. Fujiu looked at the man's action, and her typing hands suddenly stopped. The man standing at the head of the bed stood tall and straight like a pine tree in the Tsang mountain. He was very attractive. His every movement was calm and elegant, as if everything was under his control. But, what was going on? Why did the Almighty take off his pants? Chapter 149. Brother Mo, what are you doing? Fujiu narrowed her eyes slowly, but she was still smiling, looking as handsome as ever. Qin Mo's voice was indifferent. Sleep, of course. But this is my room. Fujiu raised her eyebrows to remind him. Qin Mo snorted and suddenly bent over. He put his left hand on the bed beside Fujiu, and his aura enveloped her. Even that godlike handsome face of his was very close. His hair was as black as the night, adding a bit of evil to his noble aura. Even the few strands of bangs casually falling on his fair forehead made him look unbelievably handsome. He looked at her with an inexplicable heat in his eyes. When his slightly deep voice entered her ears, it was like an expensive red wine swirling slowly. Don't you want to sleep on the same bed with me? Today, Big Brother will fulfill your wish. There was even a hint of mockery in that indifferent voice. Don't think that she couldn't tell that the Almighty was doing it on purpose. Fujiu was depressed. Haven't we already turned the page? Who gave you that illusion? The man raised his eyebrows and did not have the slightest intention to leave. Fujiu smiled. Her thin lips curled up, and she got closer to the man. But I like men. Brother Mo, aren't you afraid of me? Qin Mo's fingers paused, and then he pulled the young man away. He pressed Fujiu against the headboard, and with a faint smile, he said in an even colder tone, behave yourself when you're sleeping. If you move even a little bit, I'll make you the last in physics class. Fujiu. Didn't he promise to help her guess the questions? How could the Almighty change so quickly? But, they slept together. It wouldn't be good for her if she was found out. Fujiu's eyes curved as she thought of this. How can I control this? Brother Mo is so handsome. It's a test for me to sleep next to him. Really? Qin Mo chuckled. His lips were cold. you better control yourself. Don't stretch your hand over. Otherwise, I might chop off your claws. Fu Jiu was dispirited. Brother Mo, you are a man too. You should understand that sometimes you really can't control yourself. Qin Mo looked at the troubled youngster. Fu Jiu put on an evil and handsome face. You get it, right? To be honest, I don't really understand. Qin Mo's voice was calm, his side profile elegant and handsome. After all, I'm not gay. No matter how handsome a man sleeps beside me, I won't feel anything. Fu Jiu, alright, even if Brother Mo can't feel it, what if I attack you? Qin Mo arched a brow. You can't control yourself. I really don't have good self-control. Fu Jiu put her arm around Qin Mo's shoulder like a good brother. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone to nightclubs so often. So, Almighty, go back to your room and sleep. Fu Jiu naturally wouldn't say the last sentence out loud. She only used a pair of electric eyes to express her emotions. Qin Mo took the youngster's hand away, his smile turning colder. Since you have no self-control, I'll help you control it. Before Fu Jiu could react, Qin Mo reached out and grabbed the tie on the sofa. He tied the youngster's right wrist and the other end to the headboard. Chapter 150. The young man's appearance on the bed was very pleasing to the eye, especially his face, which was almost as fair as porcelain jade under the pure white cotton pajamas he was wearing. His silver hair was handsome, his face was handsome, and his thin lips were curled up. At that moment, there was an indescribable feeling that made people's hearts beat faster. Qin Mo glanced at him and stood up. He raised his right hand and covered the young man's head and face under the quilt. Out of sight, out of mind. He really needed to be disciplined. If you go to those dirty places again, it won't be as simple as just tying you up. Qin Mo always knew that the young man was good-looking, but he didn't expect that he had such a side to him. He was lying there like a porcelain doll. Qin Mo suddenly remembered a gathering in the courtyard. In the private room, there was a young boy who called them Big Brother when he came in. He didn't know why, but he always felt a little repulsed when he thought about it. The only thing he was sure of was that he didn't want his little brother to be like that. Qin Mo usually didn't care about someone's sexual orientation. But today, it was different. How could his little brother be under someone else's bed? Qin Mo turned around. His back was as straight as the desert. Contrary to his fiery thoughts, his deep eyes were cold, so cold that they almost affected the surrounding temperature. Fu Jiu's unbound hand was hanging by the side of the bed. She pulled the quilt away, and the Almighty had already entered the bathroom. It seemed that she couldn't avoid it this time. But judging from the Almighty's reaction, he seemed to dislike her a little. Nothing should happen. Fu Jiu moved her right hand again, and a light flashed in her black eyes. This knot wasn't simple. It looked ordinary, but it was actually very professional. The cross was hard to untie, even with a knife. The Almighty was indeed not easy to deal with. There shouldn't be anyone on the mainland who could study criminal psychology and make such a binding technique. If there was, shouldn't it be the police? Or maybe the Almighty's ability to leave meant that he was free from control. Fu Jiu suddenly closed her eyes when she thought of this. After a few seconds, she opened them again. Her eyes were unfathomable and mysterious. Then, she whistled with great interest. If the Almighty hadn't recognized her as his little brother, she would have competed with him. She wanted to see who was better, her or the Almighty. However, this wish was unlikely to come true. Speaking of wishes, if she had known earlier, she wouldn't have bragged to baby Feng. Now, he had even blown himself into it. Fu Jiu tilted her head and continued to fiddle with the black tie. Just as she was about to untie it, the Almighty appeared again. He looked like he had just taken a shower. His black hair was still damp, but he was fundamentally different from Fu Jiu. Even in this state, Qin Mo's presence was strong. He didn't take a towel and slowly strode over. After scanning her movements, his thin lips curved. "You're really capable, my little brother." "Not as good as Brother Mo." Fujio moved her hand again. "But I want to pee now, what should I do?" Chin Mo seemed to have predicted that the youngster would come up with such an excuse. He lifted his eyebrows and said calmly, "Get up, I'll go with you." Chapter 151. Chin Mo glanced at the youngster's fluffy head and slightly withered expression. His voice returned to its deep tone. "That's why I said, don't play tricks in front of me. I'm tying you up now to let you know that you shouldn't flirt so casually in the future. Regardless of whether it's in real life or in the game, men and women are the same." What else could Fujio say? The tone of an elder brother instructing his younger brother. It was rare that her male idol did not continue to attack her. However, Chin Mo's next move made Fujio pause. Chin Mo took off his shirt cleanly, which made him look even cooler. Perhaps it was because his figure was too good, even without any accessories, the man just stood there inexplicably gave people a hazy and inviolable feeling. The Almighty was definitely the kind of person who didn't care about dogma. Otherwise, he wouldn't have played games even though he had a family business. Not to mention that he would tie her up just like that. Fujio was looking directly at Chin Mo from her position. It would be weird if she looked away. Plus, she couldn't get tired of looking at the Almighty's body. She simply put her arm behind her head, using it as a cushion, and looked at the man from head to toe with pure admiration. Chin Mo would drink a glass of wine before he slept. His upper body was half naked, his slender and fair fingers holding the glass. He raised his head and took a sip. His seductive waist and well-defined chest revealed the black qilin at his waist as he moved. When Fujio wanted to take a closer look, her line of sight met that pair of deep, rippling eyes. He lowered his head and stared at her. His glowing thin lips were very close to her, as if even his breath could hit her lips. "Why don't you mention the other requirements? Like helping you take off your pajamas?" "Take off my pajamas?" What a joke. How could pajamas be taken off so casually? Even if he was wrapped in bandages and wearing a hurdle vest underneath, he couldn't take off his pajamas. Fujio smiled and said calmly, "Brother Mo, I don't need to trouble you with these trivial matters. I like to sleep with my clothes on." "Really?" This time, Chin Mo didn't say much. He turned to the side and took off the watch on his wrist. He placed it by the bedside and turned off the light, leaving only a weak light beside the bedside. Then, he took off his trousers, which he had already unbuttoned. His tall and slender figure lay down beside Fujio. His nose was high, and in the dark, he gave off an indescribable sense of asceticism. Very few people could be so luxurious and indifferent in this situation. Fujio didn't care about Fujio at all. The people in the outside world were right. If they used Almighty Chin's sleeping face as a poster, Supreme Alliance would definitely become even more popular. When he was sleeping alone, it felt very big, but with another person, it felt a little different. Especially when the other person's aura was too strong, this feeling would be magnified infinitely. Fujio moved her hand that was leaning on the side of the bed and turned over. Fujio could still smell the faint scent of tobacco. This scent came from another person, and it made Fujio want to turn her head around. It was because she had never slept with anyone before. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.